Let it be. That doesn't matter. Let me.
Okay.
GP, sorry, what was?
Fine.
No, now
That's fine, sir.
That's fine. My sound is okay.
Absolutely. Yes. Sound,
Yes, sir.
video, audio, everything. Musarrat sir, Mr. सुरेश नारायण का एक बार चेक कर लो, देखो तो ऑनलाइन. Mr. सुरेश नारायण.
Hi, Suresh. Morning.
Morning, Sadhu.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again too.
Siddiqui Saab, you're ever.
I seem like an adopted son of. I seem like an adopted son of HR Santrut.
Little bit of COVID shit, no lockdowns and everything.
You are born to the profession, but I am adopted.
Yeah. So good to go now. Respected dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, and dear students, a very pleasant good morning to you all. My name is Musarrat Hussain, and on behalf of Maruti Suzuki XISS Awanish Kumar Memorial Trust, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you all on this 9th Awanish Memorial Lecture. Those we love can never be more than a thought away. For as long as there is a memory, they live in our hearts to stay. Awanish was a dear colleague, a friend to many, and is sadly missed. Today we are here for the 9th Awanish Dev Memorial Lecture, and amongst us we have Mrs. Suparna Prasad Dev, wife of Awanish Dev. Many thanks, ma'am, for joining today for this lecture. To make the memory a blessed one, we will start today's proceeding with the Diya lighting and a homage video. Let us pay our respect and tribute to our dear colleague. May we have the TV, please?
Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, for those who love with their soul and heart. There is separation. People whom we love might indeed be gone from our side. They must not leave our hearts. Let us all take a moment to remember a great soul, an amazing human being, whose legacy is etched into the minds of men and who has touched many lives. Mr. Untitled Kumar. Born in 1962 in a middle-class household, with his father being a government employee and his mother a homemaker, Awanish was passionate about education. And so, he excelled in his academics, both during his intermediate education and higher studies. His pursuit for a better life did not just end there. As he graduated, he felt the urge to contribute to the society. Owing to the same, Awanish graduated from the Xavier Institute of Social Service. Awanish began his professional career with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited in the year 1984, followed by a 5-year stint at Bharat Electronics Limited. Those were the days he found the woman of his dreams, Suparna, and they tied the knot on 27th January 1995. The supportive husband was now also the loving and caring father of a beautiful boy, Abhyudit. An illustrious career continued and spanned through various organizations and led him to the Human Resource Department of Maruti Suzuki India Limited in June 2010. Avnish was a man of substance who ideally balanced his personal and professional life and was an absolute joy to be around.
A very good morning to all respected dignitaries, friends, and dear students. I sincerely hope you are safe and positive in what continues to be challenging times. It is now more than 9 years since that horrific night on 18 July, and the memories of that night continue to haunt and bring pain. But over the years, you learn to cope with the pain and move on, busying yourself with work, family commitments, and things that brings purpose and joy in your life. What has helped in the healing process is the support and guidance of the Maruti fraternity from the topmost level. My heartfelt thanks to Ayukawa-san for his enduring commitment in honoring Avnish's memory. When the CEO of a company makes special effort year after year to pay a visit to the family of an officer who lost his life in the line of duty, it speaks volumes of his personal commitment and moral character. Perhaps it is the Japanese way, but can be a learning for other CEOs to emulate. Another tall person in the organization, and lovely too, is Mr. Rajesh Uppal. He has been persistently mentoring my son for all these years, and I'm happy to share that after finishing college, my child, who was in class 11 when he lost his father, has now started working in Singapore. I'm sure Avnish's soul rests in peace to know that his family feels secure and cared for. Through the vision, leadership, and efforts of Siddiqui-san and the trustees of the Avnish Memorial Trust, we've been able to contribute our bit towards the spirit and cause of HR and honor Avnish's memory in meaningful and tangible ways. We are already into the 9th edition of the memorial lecture. I wish to congratulate Musrat-san and his team for realizing this event year after year. The theme of the lecture this year is Redefining ER Strategy with focus on employee well-being. The esteemed panel of HR thought leaders and academicians would help navigate through it. Hope all of us go back with insights which could help us uplift as an organization and, more importantly, as an empathetic human being. Thank you all for joining us in this journey. All the best to all of you. Stay safe, take care, and God bless you all.
It is indeed my privilege to share my thoughts with the esteemed audience. The Awanish Dev Memorial Lecture, an initiative to strengthen IR capability across the country, instills in me enthusiasm and motivates me to contribute towards the capability building of the HR community. Hats off to the committee and best wishes to all participants for the success of the 9th Awanish Memorial Lecture 2021. Thank you so much.
Avnish was one of the finest HR professionals we have ever seen. Many of us require several qualities to become a top-notch HR professional. But the one quality that we can learn from Avnish was the quality of standing up. On the 29th of September, we will listen to several speakers, many of whom will speak about several subjects which are important not only for us, but for the world that we are working in. I look forward to catching up with you on the 29th. Be there, for Avnish is still trying to tell us a lot. Thank you very much.
Have been gifted once in a lifetime opportunity to put our nation back on economic prosperity and societal well-being pedestal where we truly belong. A further tailwind to this opportunity is the friendly regulatory environment with labor reforms, conducive policy framework under the aegis of Atmanirbhar Bharat, Skill India, Digital India, etc., and India's competitive edge on emerging digital technologies. With the world looking at an alternative to China, India as a country is perhaps the best positioned to gain most from global trade. and we must take 100% responsibility and accountability to navigate our country to an unprecedented success in this arena. I believe that the foremost founding blocks to achieve this will be a harmonious, healthy, and progressive employer-employee relationship or a stable IR environment, despite accelerating super volatility and uncertainty of the times we live in.
Congratulations to Maruti Suzuki, XISS, Avnish Kumar Dev Memorial Trust on organizing the 9th edition of Avnish Dev Memorial Lecture. This is an important platform for CEOs, academics, HR, and IR leaders to consider the persistent and emerging issues in the area of industrial relations in the country. I compliment Maruti Suzuki and National Human Resource Development Network on this vital initiative, and I wish the very best to Avnish Dev Memorial Trust in achieving its objectives.
My sincere thanks to Maruti Suzuki, Xavier Institute of Social Service, and NHRDN for organizing 9th Awanish Dev Memorial Lecture on the theme Redefining ER Strategy with focus on employee well-being and inviting NIPM to be part of it. After globalization, we have seen that IR have taken a backseat and HR is in the focus. Learning and development, talent management, these are the key buzzwords in the HR professionals, and most of the youngsters are getting attracted for the same. However, lately we have started realizing that ER or IR is the base of HR, and with today's theme, it is very clearly indicative that proactive ER is always good for the organization.
With his passion and perseverance, Avnish proved to be an inspiration for all those around him. He was someone who had the courage, tenacity, and the strength of character to preserve the cause of HR and remain by the side of his values till the end. The HR team truly misses his presence and the energy he brought along. He rests in our hearts and has our respect for the kind of person he was and the values he encompassed. Avnish Kumar Dev, you are and will always be truly missed.
Thank you for the AV. Over to you, Ladli, for the proceedings of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. And then once again, there's some noise. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Request all the panelists to stay muted for some time.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Hussain. I once again extend a very warm welcome to all the respected dignitaries, thought leaders, academicians, and dear students who have joined us today virtually. Today, we are going to navigate that how performance enablement and well-being, which have been a more personal and face-to-face endeavor, are being addressed by our leaders and our organizations through the theme Redefining ER Strategy with focus on employee well-being in our inaugural session. I would now like to take the privilege to invite Mr. Rajesh Uppal to give the opening address as well as tell us more about the Maruti Suzuki XISS Avnish Kumar Dev Memorial Trust. Mr. Rajesh Uppal is the member of Executive Board of Maruti Suzuki India Limited and also the chairman of the Maruti Suzuki XISS Avnish Kumar Dev Memorial Trust. Sir drives the HR, IT, safety, and digital enterprise functions at Maruti. He has over 35 years of experience in the corporate world, spanning diverse roles and responsibilities ranging from IT, logistics, business analytics, digital transformation, HR, learning and development, and CSR. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Ladli. Mr. Suresh Narayanan, Chairman and Managing Director, Nestle India Limited. Dr. Santrup Mishra, Group Director, Carbon Black, Director, Chemical, and Director, Group Human Resources for the Aditya Birla Group. Mrs. Suparna Dev, my co-trustees of Avnish Dev Memorial Trust. Eminent group of speakers, panelists for today's session, distinguished members of the audience, and dear student friends. Very good morning to all of you. On behalf of Maruti Suzuki XISS Avanish Kumar Dev Memorial Trust, it is my proud privilege to welcome you all today. This trust was formed in 2013 to spread the awareness, share best practices around the importance of employee relations among the HR fraternity. To meet these objectives, the trust initiated a scholarship scheme for students strictly on merit cum means basis for his alumni college XISS, organizing memorial lecture every year to discuss best practices, followed by organizations around managing employee relationship, develop activities to support students and the new entrants into HR field. The trust has made significant progress under these initiatives. So far, 21 scholarship of 1 lakh each has been distributed to meritorious and deserving students of XISS. We have completed 8 memorial lectures in various cities across the country, wherein we have created wealth of knowledge. All the video recordings are available on our website. The trust has also decided to scale up its activity to expand our reach. The following new activities have been planned for this year. To publish a book which will cover the key insights from these memorial lectures and also learning from experience of subject matter experts in this field. It will act as a ready reference for corporate to deal with ER issues and maintain healthy employee relationships. National level seminars also planned during the year, and many more activities to engage developing students, such as case study contest, summer internship project contest, etc. has been planned. In fact, I'm really glad today to see such a strong turnout of audience, which is further strengthening our objective of spreading awareness. We are having today the 9th memorial lecture under the trust. These memorial lectures are intended to bring together leaders, HR professionals, academicians, management students to discuss various employee relations related best practices, guiding principles and strategies in order to build world-class organizations. As Musada shared, the theme of lecture this year is redefining ER strategy with focus on employee well-being. COVID-19 has made organizations to rethink the way they operate. Employee well-being and safety become prime importance while ensuring business continuity. Well-being has also become a core responsibility of good corporate citizenship and a critical performance strategy to drive employee engagement and productivity. Organization will have to think a new HR, IR strategy in view of changing the nature of work, workplace, and workforce. Proposed labor laws reforms and approach to unions to represent the interest of their workforce is very critical for us. Also, in light of current COVID pandemic, the employee-employer's relationship is assuming a more critical dimension than ever. These unprecedented times can serve as a window of opportunity to shape the future of work. Now we look forward to today to learn from our distinguished speakers, subject matter experts on how to redefine ER strategy with focus on employee well-being. We are honored to have very senior leaders who are keynote speakers and eminent panel members. Also, we are fortunate to have Mr. Suresh D. Tripathi, the VP HRM Tata Steels, Mr. P. Dwarkanath, former chairman GSK Consumer Health Limited, as part of our trust, and their support and guidance, we want to build the trust to new heights. Continuous mentorship of Mr. S.Y. Siddiqui to guide the trust and has been very invaluable, and this event would not have been possible without his guidance. With this, I will also like to thank our partners in this initiative, NHRDN, IMA, ISTD, CII, and NIPM for their support and guidance. Also, I would like to thank Dr. G.P. Rao for his help in organizing this event. Looking forward to your support and suggestions toward growth and success of the trust. Thank you all for being with us today. We are now eager to learn from our distinguished speaker today and hoping to take this initiative to next level. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your message. So one of the key initiatives of the Trust has been to develop leaders in the field of human resource management through postgraduate awards supporting outstanding students at Xavier Institute of Social Service, Ranchi. The purpose of the scholarship is to encourage competitiveness and learning amongst the HR specialization student of XISS. I would request Mr. Rajesh Uppal to announce the names of the recipients of the Avanish Kumar Dev Memorial Scholarship.
The winners of Avanish Dev Memorial Trust has been decided by trustees of the trust. They are Mr. Kamarjeet Singh, Ms. Shivani Roy, and Nidhi Singh. Congratulations to all the winners, well deserved.
Thank you, sir, for your encouragement and appreciation. I would now request you to take the session forward and introduce our first keynote speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, to speak about the theme of inaugural session, we have with us Mr. Suresh Narayanan, Chairman and Managing Director, Nestle India Limited. Suresh doesn't need any introduction, but for the new audience, Mr. Suresh Narayanan has over 36 years of rich experience of FMCG industry and has held senior management and top leadership roles in leading global companies. He is on board of directors of Nestle India Limited from August 2015. He holds master's degree of economics from Delhi School of Economics and has diploma in IMD program from Executive Development. He is the recipient of Best CEO Award in the MNC category by Forbes India Leadership in 2017. He was recognized among the most valuable CEO in 2019 by Business World, also awarded Best CEO FMCG for 2 consecutive years, 2019 and 20 by Business Today. Mr. Narayanan was honored as Entrepreneurial CEO at the EY Entrepreneur of the Year 2020. Welcome, Suresh. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Uppal, and I would like to wish a hearty good morning to Mr. Uppal, to Mrs. Suparna Dev, to Mr. Siddiqui, to Mr. Dwarkanath, to Dr. G.P. Rao, to Dr. Santosh Mishra, and to all the practicing managers, students, and everyone interested in this very important topic that has been held at the aegis of the Avanish Kumar Dev Memorial Trust. As I was listening to the video that was played on Mr. Avanish Kumar, though I didn't have the privilege of knowing him personally, I could see that here was a human being who had touched the lives of many other humans. And of course, Mrs. Suparna Dev is the only one here who will know it closest to her heart, and also she only knows the pain in her life as a consequence of Mr. Avanish Kumar not being there today. And yet it is important for us, ladies and gentlemen, as we reflect upon the times today, to look at how we can recast, recalibrate, and redirect ourselves in the times that are upon us. The COVID times have unleashed not just uncertainty, but they've also unleashed a sense of hopelessness, devastation, deep sadness, and a divide between the rich and the not so rich, and also between countries, also in our own societies. This has been probably the single biggest event that has disrupted mankind in many, many decades. No war, including the world wars, or indeed any other devastation before that, has wreaked the kind of havoc that the pandemic has thrown open to us, has thrown us into all the deep sea, and we don't know yet the full consequences of what we will suffer, what pain we will have, and what journey we will have to travel as human beings, as leaders, as managers, as fathers, as mothers, in whatever role we play in society. Hence, redefining our strategies is probably not just appropriate, it is an imperative. We need to do it, otherwise we do not have any scope for leading better lives in the future. If there are two themes that I would like to leave with you today, and it is all based on experience. I do realize that, as I was telling my good friend Dr. Santosh Mishra, all of you are those who have been born to the human resource profession. I am only an adoptee of the human resource profession, so therefore I can only speak from practice. I cannot speak from the pedestal of knowledge gained at either XISS or XLRI or indeed some of the best known TISS, some of the best known institutions for human resource training. So I can only speak from about 40 years of experience. And that's really the two themes that I like to dwell upon and have practiced and hopefully will leave some legacy in this. I've noticed that when people are looked upon as inspired good humans, employee badge numbers become magicians. I've seen this time and time again. If you look at an employee as a badge number, you get one set of results. If you look upon the employee as a person who's inspired and who's a good human being with all his faults and with all his strengths, they do unleash magic in your organization, however big or however small. The second theme, and this is a theme for leaders today, in a time when hubris, when ego, when super confidence, when hyper confidence on the future is around us, I would like to leave a thought with you that in a crisis, you serve a family, you don't run a company. And I think today the call of leadership is really to serve a family and not to look at running a company. These are the times, ladies and gentlemen, when compassion overtakes competence. How bright you are, how many degrees you have, whether you are a honored citizen, whether you receive numerous awards, makes no consequence to the people around you. What is of consequence to them is the fact that you are compassionate, you are empathetic, you listen, and you want to protect. There is no other more important objective for corporates, whether large or small, but the safety and security of their people. Ultimately, people-centered organizations are organizations that succeed, at least till now. We don't know what artificial intelligence and machine learning will do to our jobs in the future, but as of now, you still need to have leadership, you still need to have emotions, you still need to have strategies, you still need to have policies, you still need to practice empathy, compassion, you still need to practice discipline, you still need both carrot and the stick, and you also need persuasion and nudging to make people change their behaviors in the appropriate direction that you believe is in the best interests of the organization. So when this is the environment around us, there are three elements that have completely got redefined: work, workers, and workplace. All these three in the context of the pandemic have been redefined. What is the nature of work? Do you need to have work being confined to offices or to hubs or indeed to an in-home situation largely? And what are the consequences, therefore, of structures, accountability, responsibilities, and process? That is not the topic for today, but this is a topic that is exercising most organizations, whether they are large or whether they're small. How do you manage talent? We have all believed in having talent at the location of the office. Remote talent has never been seen as a way in which organizations thrive. If I need a good marketing manager and the person is sitting out of Bangalore and I'm sitting out of Gurugram, it has always been thought that there is a inefficiency in workplace if you are going to have the employee sitting at a different location from where the core of the activities are taking place. Today, that will get redefined. How well will companies be willing to move with this is a subject that I'll quickly come to. Second, the nature of workers, the nature of people, the nature of jobs is undergoing a dramatic change. Today, if you look at in the context of India, a lot of the employment that has been lost has been documented to whatever extent it has been documented, shows that white collar paid jobs and the better paid jobs seem to have vanished much faster than the lower paid jobs. How are we going to define the workers of the future? Are they going to be capable of leading as decent, as happy, as prosperous lives as their parents? Or are they going to be ridden with uncertainty, being parts of either willfully or not willfully of the gig economy? And thereby, their fortunes can keep going up and down depending on the vagaries of the economy. So how is that going to be defining the definition and the tapestry of workers in the context of the industry? And third, of course, workplace. All of us are today grappling with it. Some of us have started our offices, some of us are in the process of starting them. We are having 10% occupancy, 20% occupancy. We are having various debates on whether it is important to get people into the office at this stage and what proportion to be looking at for the future. Are the central business districts going to become empty and are the countrysides going to become full? Or indeed, is that a wild prognostication that we cannot have? These are still up in the air. But yet, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that there are 4 or 5 principles from time immemorial, which can be gleaned from organizations that have been well run, that have been well orchestrated, and that have been well led. 5 principles that I would like to leave with you today, to ponder with, to think about, because these are important principles. Number 1, at this stage, at this time, purpose, values, and culture are more important than capex, offices, factories, and the material space that we call the infrastructure or the hardware of a company. My organization went through a serious crisis not too long ago, 5 to 6 years ago. People credit me with a lot of leadership, with a lot of work. I always smile and I say it was not me, it was the people. And I genuinely mean it. An organization that has a purpose, an organization that has at its central core respect for ourselves, respect for each other, respect for diversity, and respect for the planet. And an organization where the cultural elements have been strong and have been enduring. We are a 155-year-old company. For 110 years, we've been in India. Generations have come. Cultures have been built. This culture is the unspoken language that comes into action when there is a crisis. At this stage, it is therefore important for us to dwell on the culture. You can't create culture in a crisis. You might as well have created this culture in the past for it to come to effect during a crisis. So people, purpose, values, and culture are becoming central to the discussions that we are having. This is important not just as an emotional element, it is very important as a strategic element, because going forward, it is going to be this focus on values and culture, where people's lives have been redefined, where they have seen sadness and grief of a kind that they have never imagined in their lives. how do you get them back productively into the workforce is not going to be by diktats or by spreadsheets or by Gantt charts or by strategic lectures on how they should be redefining themselves, but on gentle nudging, on examples, on storytelling and hope. These are the only ways in which you can get people back into the context. And therefore, during this pandemic, my first and only priority, until now that remains the only priority, is the safety and security of my people. We announced programs to get our frontline, and yes, there are about 10 to 12,000 people who work in the frontline of the company. Not all of whom are employees of this company, but they work for our distributors, they work for our partners. We got each one of them a COVID insurance because we said that during this time, if something happens to them, who's going to take care of their family? Was this a budgeted expense? No. Was it part of the policy? No. Was it part of the standard operating procedures for the company? No. But yet it was done. Similarly, for our workers, and I'm very pleased to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that during this entire pandemic, my factories operated for every single day. My workers came. Why did they come? There is a risk in the air. I was work from home, but they were there in the factory. The call of the worker was to the commitment and the culture that united them. This went beyond any long-term settlements that we have had with them. They can take out a long-term settlement and say safety and security is very important, and if I don't feel like working, I don't feel like working. But yet they do what they do. That is important, and that happens because you have purpose, values, and culture in the organization. And the task of leadership is to be an evangelist. The task of leadership is not to be wielding the stick all the time. Yes, you need to wield the stick sometimes. But it is important to be an evangelist of the cultural elements of the organization. None more so at this time. In redefinition of your employee strategies, purpose, values, and culture has to be at the center. This is where I appeal to my HR colleagues. Many times my HR colleagues take their jobs only as being organizational development, as being reward remuneration and talent selection. Your job, and you come to the table on business, and you have people here like Dr. Samsud Mishra who are on the table for business for decades. And they will empathize with this point and they will resonate with this point. That HR can come to the table only when it is seen to be adding value to the business, not when you are seen to be doing only administrative tasks. And that HR task at this stage is going to be building the edifice of the purpose, values, and culture of the organization. That is where they contribute the most. And how does that translate into structure, process, systems, rewards, and outcomes is what they would be working through with the different businesses. So this is certainly up for grabs in terms of recalibration. Number two, partnerships. Now is the time when you look at partnerships with your workers as a mission. You don't look at it as a contractual relationship between employer and employee. This is the time, ladies and gentlemen, that you need to reflect, if you're running factories, if you're running offices, on the quality of leadership. I've noticed that a lousy factory manager or a lousy branch manager or a lousy regional manager has impact adverse for at least 2 generations after him. It takes that much time for the organization to detoxify itself. How are we choosing our leaders at this time? In the factories, in our operating establishments, whether they are HR people or whether they are operating people or whether they are managers or engineering managers or whatever. I speak more from a manufacturing industry since that's where I've got some familiarity. But the choice of leadership is going to become very important. And what are the matrices of leadership that we have? Today, our matrices of leadership is individual KPI achievement. What you need tomorrow is teamwork, empathy, and getting the best out of people in times that are going to be uncertain for a long, long time. The criteria of leadership and the choice of leadership is going to be very different. Are we thinking about it? Are we going to do something about it? To make this relationship between employee and the leadership and the employer one of partnership. The third, progress as an instrument of change. We've always believed in incremental change. This is the time when you are going to be faced with dimensional shifts. with tectonic shifts in the way in which we look at policies, we look at talent, and we look at diversity. All this has been incremental subjects. Some organizations have taken it dramatically, some other organizations have taken it incrementally. Policies need to be redefined today in terms of not only the worker, and the workplace practices. And what that will mean is only dependent on how bold, how wise, and how credible the leadership in the organization is. Number two, on talent, and I already touched upon one of the elements of talent. Location agnostic talent is probably going to become very important for the future. I can be sitting in the United States and doing a job for an operator in India, for a company in India, and that will happen in real time. I need to be able to accommodate it. What does that mean in terms of the culture of the organization? What does that mean in terms of people who show up for work and people who don't show up for work? And those who don't show up for work feeling that they have been deprived of opportunities because they don't show up and the bosses don't see it. I think these are going to be important issues that we look at in terms of management of talent. And third, diversity. I think diversity today is an economic necessity. It's got nothing to do with emotions or a sense of fairness. They are not doing women a charity by saying, okay, we are giving you 10% of jobs or 20% of jobs. I am extremely happy that in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be commissioning a factory in Gujarat that is going to be 65% women operators. Why are we doing this? We are doing this because we believe as an organization that women make a disproportionate contribution to the fortunes of the company. By just talking about it, it doesn't help. By doing something about it, it helps. So when this factory gets up and running, you'll be eating some of your Maggi noodles, which will be produced entirely by women at the factory. I'm sure it will be tasting more flavorful. I'm sure it will be tasting much better because they anyway make a lot of it at home as well. So it is an important journey of diversity along with sustainability. Sustainability is important, and I think that's a theme for a different topic, for a separate discussion. But diversity, talent, and policies, therefore, will become important in measuring the progress of organizations. Number four, performance. Performance will now need to be recalibrated not only in terms of shared aspirations and goals, but also in terms of outcomes. How wise are we as leaders to take outliers of leadership and get them to contribute to the organization? We've all had templates of leadership. We've had stereotypes of leadership. This is the kind of leaderships that we have been looking at for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. The tectonic shift that the pandemic has brought about will necessitate a rethink on the template of leadership. What core competencies, what skills, what emotional quotients, what IQ, what forward-thinking skills, what proactive skills, what agility, what adaptability, what are the skills that we're going to be talking about at different levels of manning the organization, and will that even dramatically change in terms of structure? So there are numerous consequences of this that becomes exciting. I look at this as an opportunity. I don't look at this as a chore. This is almost like, and pardon my use of this analogy, of the building being burned down and for you to reconstruct that building. You can reconstruct that building in the manner in which it is relevant and in the way in which it should be, rather than the way it was. And that is really the challenge of performance. And finally, proactive management of change. Organizations of the future have to be agile and adaptive. They have to assimilate, they have to be agile, and they have to be adaptive. If we don't have these three facilities in the organization in terms of the DNA of the organization being built in, I'm afraid organizations will fall into the atrophy of irrelevance very quickly. And that means that proactive management of change will be an important element in the consonance of the overall context of the company and the culture. So I call it the 5 Ps: purpose, values, and culture; partnership as a mission; progress as an instrument of change; performance as a shared aspiration and goal; and proactive management of change. When all this happens well in the organization, you will have some telltale signs for you to see. Culture will speak, innovation will flow, crisis will become opportunities, conflict will turn to dialogues, and progress becomes an imperative and not an outcome of effort. We are, ladies and gentlemen, in very exciting times. We are also in times that require leadership, that requires courage, that requires boldness, that requires dedication, and that requires tenacity. If we have these elements, the change that is upon us can be constructively converted into a change that will be a force multiplier for the future. However, if we choose not to make those changes, and if we do not choose the boldness of leadership, but the temerity of being constant, then we will have the consequences for the future, where redefining our ER strategy will unfortunately not be a priority task that will be given to management. I believe these are exciting times. I'm delighted to be participating today in this lecture. I give my homage to Awanish Kumar Dev for the strong work that he did in all the organizations that he served. And I'm sure that from wherever he is, he'll be proud to see us at least deliberate on the very issues that unfortunately met with his end, which can now contribute to a better and a more glorious future. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Suresan. I think that was very, very insightful, straight away coming from your experience. I think you have given a food for thought to all of us to ponder upon and redefine our HR strategies as we go along. Thank you so much once again. Now, for the next inaugural session, we have with us Dr. Santrup Mishra, Group Director Carbon Black, Director Chemical, and Director Group Human Resource of the Aditya Birla Group. Santrup has been a aspiring leader for all of us in the HR fraternity faculty. I mean, one shining example where, as Suresh said, moved from HR leadership to a business leadership in a large organization. Santrup has the 3 decades of experience of global leadership, corporate governance, and organizational transformation, non-profit leadership, and professional development. He is a director in several companies of Aditya Birla Group, including Aditya Birla Capital Limited, Grasim, Birla Carbon Thailand, which is a listed company there. He is an independent director on board of ONGC, a leading Government of India enterprise, and also chairperson of Board of Governors of NIT Rourkela. He is also a governing body of professional associations such as Association of Executive Search Council Consultants, US. He was also on board of XIM Bhubaneswar and the Worldwide ERC USA. He also served as a member of SHRM Certification Commission US. Welcome, Dr. Santrup Mishra. Over to you.
Dr. Santrup, we are not getting your audio.
This way? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is better.
All right, thanks. Sorry, it kept on saying that the organizers have muted me, so I don't know. Technology always has strange things. Thank you, Mr. Uppal, for the kind words. Mrs. Suparna Dev, the trustees of Avanish Dev Memorial Trust, my good friends, all of you, Mr. Suresh Narayanan, my longtime friend. Thank you all for having me today. I am really touched by the fact that Maruti Suzuki, XISS, and all the partner organizations have cared enough and bothered enough to keep Avanish's memorial and memory alive in the manner that you have been doing, by discussing contemporary events of relevance that have touched our lives negatively perhaps. But I'm so grateful to all of you for keeping his memory alive through a very productive means of creating a platform of this kind. And to be very honest, a few days ago, after Mr. Siddiqui invited, and 3 days ago, as I was looking at my calendar, I asked myself, what could be the best tribute I could pay to Avanish? And many thoughts crossed my mind, but one thought crossed my mind is that I have a choice. And the choice was either to sit in the comfort of my headquarters office or my home and to make this presentation, or I could make the effort to get to a factory of mine where kind of Avanish worked and the kind of environment that Maruti presented with the unfortunate tragic event happened. And I thought perhaps me addressing this conference from a factory location rather than sitting in my head office or my bedroom would be perhaps a fitting tribute. So I made an effort of traveling at 7:30 this morning from my home to about a 2-hour away factory of mine in Patalganga, Birla Carbon Factory. I thought I will speak from the factory. You can understand why the internet is unstable and why it is so, because that is the part of employee relations of the future that we need to build, where you need to be there on the floor. You need to be there with the people to understand what they go through. And I'm glad I came this morning, because as I approached the factory, I found the road maintained by the panchayat is all potholed. And obviously on there are coming my workmen, my young officers, my managers, sometimes on two-wheelers, creating safety risk. So before this seminar started today, I discussed with the factory manager. I said, okay, what could we do to make it safer both for our employees and any community using, and can we perhaps encourage and work with the Gram Panchayat and the collector to concretize the road, at least from the main road into the factory, whatever half a kilometer, etc. And I'm so glad that I made this effort to come here, that there's something beneficial outcome is coming out. I believe that at one level, employee relations strategy, I question that premise and I want you to reflect about. Relationship is a human process. It's a simple thing. Why do I need so many strategies for it? What does it take to build and maintain, manage and further a relationship? It requires trust, it requires transparency, it requires understanding, it requires reciprocity, it requires sharing, it requires support, it requires affection. If these are foundational aspects of any relationship, employee relationships can equally be built on these foundations, the basic foundations of how one human being needs to relate to another human being, with respect, with dignity, with trust. And what makes it harder? And that takes me to the next point to say that maybe sometimes over-strategizing about employee relations takes us to the domain of being opportunistic, domain of being manipulative. And maybe that is what is a cause of a problem. Could we bring down over-strategizing about employee relation to simplification and build it on foundations of, as Suresh talked about, basic human emotions perhaps, basic human needs perhaps. So I know several young students are listening to this. I want to leave this one thought with you, that sometimes over-engineering, overthinking, over-strategizing complicates it, and we need to bring it down to the basics and foundational and fundamental values. Point number one. Point number two, I believe that a productive, strong, lasting employee relations is not an issue to be addressed only at the firm level. I believe there is a global dimension to it. There's a national dimension to it, there is a firm dimension to it, and there is a floor dimension to it. And I would like to elaborate on all four a little bit for your consideration. I have 20 minutes, I know, and perhaps, thank you for giving me this opportunity, Siddiqui Saab. I believe this would be the most valuable 20 minutes of my life spent remembering a colleague and remembering a good cause. So when I talk about at a global level or national level, how employee relations, because employee relations, if we think about only at the firm level or the floor level, I think is too limiting, because there are issues of employee relations that originate from a global or national context that simply cannot be addressed at the firm or a floor level intervention. And we need to understand that, we need to reflect about it, we need to be aware of it. Now, when I say global or national level, the fundamental issues are two. Avanish lost his life on account of violence. And we need to discuss about national global level, the root cause of violence as a part of political culture. Long since it has been said that political, economic, and social malcontents of today become the radicals and revolutionaries of tomorrow. The economic, political, and social malcontents of today. And violence is a manifestation of a certain thought process, a psychology, a behavior. And we need to understand and educate, dialogue about the role of violence in society and what is that is promoting. The role of media, the role of computer games, the narratives that we are presenting, the leadership aggression that is visible. And when I say violence, there is a role of firm level and floor level also, because violence is not a larger societal phenomenon. When every moment of time, I do not have a psychological sense of safety at the firm, at the work level, where I'm all the time under the threat of getting downsized, fired by any manager by whims and fancies, I think it is an indirect form of violence. And we need to think about it. Similarly, another larger global and national phenomenon that we need to address if we want to address employee relations effectively is the whole issue of inequality. The reality of life is that there is significant inequality in distribution of wealth, resources, privileges, opportunity, access. And I do not think we can address at firm and floor level employee relations by completely ignoring, pretending to be blind to the whole issue of inequality in society. We all, as white collar people, senior management, experienced people, and people that are coming in, we need to reflect on it when we argue about our own compensation revision, own LTIP, own long-term incentives, large amounts of payouts. I think every research, and I don't need to keep quoting you research, you all know that the discrepancy, the inequality has been growing between haves and have-nots. And as Suresh was saying, perhaps the pandemic has accelerated, made it more glaring with hundreds and thousands of people or millions of people right across the world perhaps having lost their jobs. Now we need to remain sensitive to this issue of inequality, lack of opportunity to be educated, to be employed, to have access to anything. And I'm glad you all are giving in Avanish's memory the scholarships. Maybe you're recognizing merit, but I think we need to create more platforms of that kind to provide people access where they believe the life has something to offer, irrespective of the parents to whom they were born, or the school they went to, or the part of India they were born into, or Myanmar, or any part of the world. So I think the issue of inequality is integrally connected with the issue of violence, is integrally connected to the issue of strained relationships, conflicts, power tussle between haves and have-nots and people aspiring and all of that. And we simply cannot at firm and floor level solve employee relations issues and build constructive relations unless we remain sensitive to the issue of inequality at the world. Coming down to more firm and floor level, I think a fundamental issue of human dignity needs to be addressed at the firm and floor level. Respect for individual, irrespective of the level and status. Dignity in terms of appreciation that people are contributing and can contribute. Education is not the only indicator of what you can contribute. Dignity in terms of acknowledging the human being behind the warm body that is coming to work. I think we have a long way to go in training Indian managers to provide dignity to people irrespective of the level of work they do. Many of our executive education, where we have perhaps been able to teach business strategy, we have been able to teach newer models and operating models, etc., but we have failed to teach, and this is something I would appeal to my HR colleagues to think about more, that how is it that we have failed to teach people how to provide respect and dignity to people in organizations irrespective of their level. And part of the dignity is that whole concept that I talked about, psychological safety. People are struggling with it. Economic struggle, on top of that, disease, on top of that, global conflict, on top of that, insecurity of employment. All of this requires we are putting in more effort to create a climate of safety. Climate of safety along with accountability. By all means, I'm not saying climate of safety means there's a guarantee that no matter how you behave, whether you are performing or not, as Suresh was talking about, or you're being unproductive, still I need to provide you a psychology of safety. But when people are under threat of a virus and other situations, we need to put in more effort to create a climate of safety. How do we do it? There cannot be prescription about it. Every organization, every firm, every floor, every manager, every supervisor, shift in charge must devise their own way of creating that psychological safety. Mental health, as a part of psychological safety, is becoming a bigger source of challenge. All the kind of actions with people going loose with guns in the US or recently in Russia, other parts of the world, sometimes in India we find, all of this is happening because of poor mental health. I do not think in our medical schemes, in our many support systems, in organizations, we acknowledge stress to be a killer. We do enough to address the stress of people. And it is not just people down the line. I think even senior management often are highly stressed because the expectations are higher for them. The stakes are higher for them. And therefore, we need to create more acknowledgement, acceptance of mental health as a phenomenon and think about what can be done, and that will be build better employee relations. The last issue I want to say is continued employment, employment security are matters of the past. Continuous learning, continuous development, reskilling, upskilling are the only way that we all can remain relevant, and so can perhaps the blue collar, semi-skilled and other people. Again, we need to ask the question, what are our programs, what are our efforts to provide that climate and opportunity for continuous learning and development, which can address people's concern about economic security and employment security in the short to medium term, if not in the long term. This is again an issue we need to think about more, and maybe that requires a more collaborative action, even between firms, within industry. It may not be a problem that can be tackled only at a firm level sometimes, particularly if you're an MSME or a smaller firm. So ladies and gentlemen, the problem is at many levels. It starts with our individual attitude. It goes on to the global phenomenon of violence and inequality and many other kinds of discrimination and that people suffer. Death is an unfortunate event, but it has triggered positive outcome. Archbishop Ferdinand, the heir apparent to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, when was murdered in 1914 perhaps, along with his wife in Sarajevo, it triggered the First World War. If you remember, recently, unfortunate death of George Floyd in the US re-triggered the Black Lives Matter issue. In Indian context, Avnish's sacrifice would not go a waste if we can create in this platform a new framework of employee relations that includes micro, firm, and floor level intervention with a larger and broader thinking at global and national level to say that issues of that nature cannot be solved simply by us creating some paternalistic programs at the firm level. They have their role, their benefit, but we need to broaden this conversation. A more inclusive society, a more opportunist society, or society that creates opportunities, a society that is more egalitarian, a society that is more concerned. I think that kind of feeling, if we can create in the broader world, we hopefully would move to a stronger relationship, and that relationship will be a productive relationship, and that relationship will be a lasting relationship. So I thank you all for inviting me, and I pray and hope, Avnish, wherever you are, your soul remains at peace, and you bless us all from there to say that we further the cause that you represented in Maruti, in all other organizations that you work for. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Santrup. I think that was truly insightful, coming straight from your global experience of working in this area of managing various cultures, various societies and all. Thank you so much once again for being with us today. That was all we had in the opening session. Over to Ladli to take the whole discussion forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Suresh Narayanan, Dr. Santrup Mishra and Uppal sir for sharing your thoughts, message and perspectives with us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward. We are going towards the final keynote of the inaugural session and also the concluding address. I'll take the privilege to invite Mr. S.Y. Siddiqui, who is the Executive Advisor of Maruti Suzuki India Limited. Mr. Siddiqui is working directly with the Managing Director on future business strategy and people challenges 2020 and beyond. And he is also heading the Maruti Suzuki Reality Business Vertical. Previously, he has worked in the capacity of Executive Director HR, Chief Operating Officer for HR, Finance, IT and Legal, and Chief Mentor at Maruti Suzuki. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Raji. Mrs. Suparna Dev, Mr. Suresh Narayan, Dr. Santrup Mishra, Varta Garu, Suresh, Rajesh, my colleagues from Maruti Suzuki, and also my colleague from Suzuki Motors, Gujarat, TDSV, the lithium-ion batteries, colleagues also from Gujarat. Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, very good morning. It is very tough to be the third speaker after, two stars have already spoken. So I'm in a real dilemma because I think some of those outstanding, points raised by first Suresh and then Santrup obviously are great learning even for me. And maybe whenever I've heard earlier also Mr. Narayan, I think he comes so natural as a HR CEO. That's the impression I get. He talks from his heart, from his passion, what he has done as a CEO. And Santrup has been our role model, I think, for all of us. A mentor, we are all fan of what we have seen him for many years. And being a close friend is a privilege. And thank you very much to both of you. Our gratitude for being with us today. I think when we are looking at deliberating on this redefining ER strategy with focus on employee well-being, I think the first thing we all talked was the COVID pandemic. I think last 18-20 months have been the worst human crisis we have ever faced. First wave, while it was a sudden development, led to anxiety and uncertainty and a little bit of fear. But the second wave was a shocking disaster in terms of its aggressive spread and maybe loss of human lives and various other post-COVID health challenges. It also obviously badly disrupted the economic activity, hitting business, trade and industry adversely, and some sectors were severely, hit, like the hospitality, travel and tourism. I think maybe when we are looking at ER in this context, one more important perspective comes to my mind, the emerging new world order. During and post-pandemic, the focus on employee health and safety, as we heard Suresh and also had Santrup, and well-being has become a top priority agenda for the leadership. Next comes the effort for reboot and recovery of maybe economy and business. And we could also agree and sense this emergence of the new normal, which we have been discussing in the last 1 year or so, largely, based on our experience. This is perhaps maybe a kind of new normal which is making things little different for us, and we are not very accustomed to what we have been doing for years. Maybe when we are also looking at the new world order, the digital era, which got accidentally by default accelerated during the pandemic, when we look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, maybe bots, robotics, I think redefining business processes, products and services, and we are talking now of a hybrid workplace. Maruti as an automobile company would have never thought of work from home, but today work from home, office, factory, everything is very much there. All physical meetings, travel is totally gone out of the context to a great extent in the past 2 years, and therefore there is a need for HR to be, having great flexibility, capability to think out of the box. And maybe we are very clear that digital will have a say and digital is going to stay. Maybe one more factor which we have all been experiencing, globalization, and what we have seen is that corporates across the globe grappling with issues, persistent global uncertainty, new regulations, rapid pace of business change, and post-COVID, this emerging need for reverse globalization. Auto industry today is facing this great crisis of global supply chain, microchips, semiconductors, and our production is getting hit to the extent of maybe 30%, 35%. Perhaps we are looking at the China dilemma, to have relationships, sourcing, or not to have relationships with China. And maybe we are also looking at an auto industry phasing out of the fossil fuel cars and transition to electric vehicles and hybrid. Big challenge when we talk of this transition. We are also looking at maybe the fourth factor, which is, in my thinking, maybe Suresh also talked of very clearly. Santosh also hinted towards that. It is still a huge opportunity for India to display its great potential. Skilled manpower, predominantly younger workforce than many other global destinations, an opportunity to attract investments as an alternate to China. Japan being a very big case in that context. But key challenges for us will again be quality levels, global quality levels, labor reforms, and a cultivating a kind of a productive, positive employee relations perspective. And I think to a great extent I'll get guided by what Santosh was saying, maybe firm level, floor level, one part, but then national level another part, and then global level another. You cannot separate out all the three. I think very rightly guided by him. Therefore, what could be a kind of a strategic maybe, or not so strategic, but more commonsensical framework for employee relations? I think first was emphasized by both Santosh and Suresh in a big way. I think to a great extent, we'll have to look at people first. Human beings, maybe priority on employee health, safety and well-being will be obviously a hygiene factor, but people first. And when we are looking at offering a positive work culture, then it should reflect that kind of ethical values, respect, integrity, and equal opportunity for all. Maybe Mr. Bhargava has been talking a lot about welfare connect with families. That's my big learning, will be critical. Maybe respect for the institution of union, partnering in collaborative relationship, learning from Japan. And I think at Maruti, Aikawa-san has been kind of a great example. He has been insisting with me past 4 or 5 years to set up a welfare fund. Maybe 1% of the PAT every year we will contribute. And we could be able to do that in 2018, July. And we are now having post-retirement medical insurance for all our people. Request for more for our workers, giving them this opportunity, as Santosh was saying, making them feel that they are part of the company. We value them. And we should not have that huge difference between the lowest pay and the highest pay. Maybe when we are looking at competitive salary and benefits, I've always looked at this one perspective, not high salary, not low salary, but competitive salary and benefits. This welfare focus will complement the objective of well-being and maybe to a great extent driving positive employee relations. We are looking at communication, huge learning from Japan with associates, with unions about the changing business environment. We should always tell them what is happening on the business front, because keeping that gap can create a lot of misunderstanding. And this part maybe part of the new normal is very, very critical. What is the competitive edge of our business, of our company? This regular sharing of information should be part of the kind of change we are looking at on the ER strategy. Maybe when we are looking at also the need for transformation, I think to a great extent, we'll have to really talk loudly, bottoms up in the company, quality, cost, productivity, affordability of the company, sustainability of business operations. And recently we had this, tough example of Ford Motors closing down. I think somewhere there has to be a kind of a louder discussion on these perspectives. Number 5, I think in my thinking, and to a great extent what I have also learned from Japan, need to educate unions and associates in India will be very relevant. Affordability of the company to pay, this disconnect sometimes create unrealistic aspirations. And maybe avoiding future overweight, because I think the global context, next 5, 7 years, 10 years, high cost arbitrage, I think will create a big problem for any company, for any business. So need for ownership, understanding, and a collaborative approach. And I think to a great extent, when I look at the 6th factor, and Santosh talked about it very clearly, capability building will be a trump card. If our people will remain what they have been in the last 20, 30 years, we are gone. That's it for disaster. I think learning capacity will be more critical than the talent, experience. And maybe to a great extent, skilling, upskilling, and multi-skilling will be the way forward, whether it is shop floor associate, supervisors, or as Santosh said, even managers, they may require capability building big way. 7th factor, last but not the least, ethical, value-based leadership. Suresh talked about it largely. I think in Maruti, we have been very lucky to have people like Mr. Bhargav or Mr. Ayuka or Mr. Nakanishi earlier. And to a great extent, my thinking is that HR should be viewed as a business function, adding value to business, as Suresh said, not in isolation identity, recruiting people and making performance management system. That is outdated in my thinking. When I look at maybe a benchmark, but before that, this big question of the 4 new labor codes, that I think in the corporate panel we'll be discussing largely. Labor code on wages, which came 2019. Labor code on IR, social security, occupational safety and health, maybe as recent as 2020. How we are going to prepare for it, I think that will be one basic challenge in front of perhaps companies, both unions as well as us. And maybe when we look at a benchmark, I think I have this compelling learning from Japan. The Japan model of ER, perhaps most mature, maybe successful, and sustained benchmark, maybe we can look at. When I look at 3 key principles there, top leadership, ethical character is very important. Modesty, leading by example, high vision quotient, and perhaps the ratio of lowest paid to highest paid is about 28 times compared to 400 times, 500 times in other companies in India also. And as I said, I have been a very, very excellent example at Maruti Suzuki. And perhaps when I look at this benchmark, I had this opportunity of taking our National HRD network people in an advanced leadership program, which was very senior people from public sector, private sector, executive director level people, with Dr. Preetham Singh, 2018 and 19, and took them around companies in Japan. And Ayuka especially flew from New Delhi to Tokyo to address their NHRDN advanced leadership program. And I think the feedback from those 30, 40 odd people I interacted twice, 2 years, was simply outstanding in terms of this Japan benchmark. When we are also looking at maybe the unions, to a great extent, company respects the institution, but union respect the affordability of the company. The basic first priority is business growth and sustained kind of profitability of the company. Then comes salary, bonus, and other issues. And maybe the third factor, my learning is both the company and the unions first look at affordability of business. So they have organization, as Santosh rightly said, firm level, floor level, then group level, then sector level, then country level. So JAMA perhaps representing automobile industry right up to the country level, Japan level, that union link is provided there, unlike India. Maybe I think to a great extent that is one big learning. And maybe commitment, productivity, self-discipline, punctuality is all highly factor in their case. So perhaps I look at that as way forward, but I think the kind of views which have been expressed by both Mr. Narayan and Santosh, part of the guidance for the trust, I think we'll be trying to imbibe that, have a kind of a wider, maybe a kind of conversation. To a great extent, maybe when we look at guidance coming from Mr. Bhargav, a very respected figure in our context, and maybe with the kind of role he has played as the founder of auto industry in India, I think is very much in line with what we heard from Mr. Narayan and also from Santosh. And I take this opportunity also to convey my thanks and gratitude to Mr. Xavier, Chairperson for CII National Leadership and HR Committee, and Ms. Rekha Sethi, Director General IMA, and also to my close friend Mr. Nathan, National President of National HRD Network, Mr. Vishesh Kulkarni, very nice of him from NIPM, and Mr. Natraj, ISTD. Our respectful homage to Avnish on this occasion, and thank you, Suparna, for being with us all these years and motivating us to give kind of a little nudge that we keep on doing more on this field in the memory of Avnish. And as Santosh has guided, maybe we'll take it to a slightly different level now in future. And with this, I conclude my address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us. I would now like to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Musarrat Hussain.
लेकिन कैमरा
So we are waiting for Mr. Musarrat Hussain to fix few glitches facing.
यहाँ से करता है हाँ वेबिनार आईडी
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We now move towards the next segment of the memorial lecture, which is the corporate panel discussion. The 4 new codes on industrial relations, wages, social security and occupational health, safety, and working condition is going to rationalize many central labor laws. Let us understand from our esteemed panel what are the major changes the industry is going to witness and what kind of preparation we need to do as an organization. The theme for the corporate panel is preparing for the new labor codes. Let me introduce the panel to you. Today's session is going to be moderated by Mr. P. Dwarkanath, former chairman, GSK Consumer Healthcare Limited. Dwarka sir needs no introduction. He is a seasoned HR veteran and has served as the non-executive chairman and nominee director of Horlicks Limited, which runs under the global healthcare brand GlaxoSmithKline GSK. He has over 40 years of experience in engineering, chemical, pharma, consumer goods industry. Welcome, sir. Our first panelist is Mr. Madhu Damodaran. He is the group head legal and compliance of XISS Corp Limited. He is a lawyer and company secretary by profession with more than 2 decades of experience focused around labor law consultancy and HR outsourcing operation. Welcome, Mr. Madhu Damodaran. Our second panelist is Mr. R.P. Singh. He is the director HR and legal at Indian Farmer Fertilizer Cooperative Limited, IFCO, New Delhi. He is also on the board of several joint ventures of IFCO in India and abroad. And he has a very long stint of several decades in HR, IR and legal services. Welcome, Mr. R.P. Singh. Our third panelist is Mr. Shrikant Reddy Narala, Senior Vice President ER and Head GCOE Aditya Birla Group. He is an LLM and MBA started professional career with L&T ECC division at their Mumbai-Pune Expressway project and then moved to L&T Cement business. After demerger of L&T Cement to Aditya Birla Group, continues to be in the cement business of Ultratech Cement. Welcome, Mr. Srikanth Reddy. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Ram Kishore S. He is currently working as Vice President and Head HR, Divisional Corporate L&T Construction. He is an illustrious alumni of IIM Ahmedabad. He has more than 3 decades of experience in entire gamut of HR and services. And our fifth panelist is Mr. Suresh Dutt Tripathi, former Vice President and now Advisor, HR, Tata Steel Limited. He is also the trustee, Maruti Suzuki XISS Avanish Kumar Dev Trust. Mr. Tripathi comes with more than 37 years of experience in different industries from steel to chemical, IT and education in both public and private sectors, SAIL, SCL, MASCON, SRF, etc. So welcome Mr. Suresh Tripathi. Before I hand over the baton to Mr. Dwarka Nath, let's have a huge round of applause for the esteemed panel. Over to you, Dwarka sir.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Hussain, for your kind introduction. It's indeed a great honor and privilege to be part of this team as a trustee, and I would like to thank the organizers, namely the Maruti, XISS Ranchi, as well as Suparnaji. It is always a great pleasure to have you here. I have been attending virtually all the memorial lectures, and you have been a source of inspiration and support. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very mixed audience today. We have academicians, we have young students, we have corporate leaders, and now, just now you heard the perspectives of the CEOs in the keynote address, and I would like to take it forward from there. I just want to set the context because I think we were given initially 75 minutes. We are running 10 minutes late. I would request my fellow panelists we should manage in about 60-65 minutes if it's convenient to all of you. And also, let us be interactive as we discussed earlier, and we would also try to receive few questions from the viewers and participants so that we can spare some time. I think the panelist is a very distinguished panel. I've just done a quick back envelope calculation. The total experience of the 5 panelists is 170 years. And nobody is less than a quarter century here. And there are people who are crossing 45 like R.P. Singh, Suresh Ji, 40 years and others. So, and people have experience in public sector, private sector. Some of them worked in both sectors and some of them worked in private sector, and you have a lawyer. So we have not chosen any rank in the order in which we need to do it as been introduced. That's for the sake of convenience. Perhaps we are not following any particular order. But I think to provide more clarity, I just want to mention to all the viewers 2 things. The theme of this Avanish Dev 9th Memorial Lecture is Redefining ER Strategy with focus on well-being. The first panel, which consists of the corporates, is at some stage we plan to do it with trade union leaders and regulators, but we want to confine the first one. One of the burning items, which is in everybody's mind, it is not just in ER, HR, it is in the minds of everybody, all stakeholders at large who are involved with the welfare, well-being, and employee relations. I think I don't want to re-emphasize the fact what is the purpose of the Avanish Dev Memorial, the trust. I think it has been reinforced a couple of times even today, but I just want to bring it to your notice how important employee relations are. And when you talk about employee relations, it is not just the trade union and management relations. it is not just the labor laws. Sometimes we suffer from the syndrome, labor laws is not seen as strategic, labor laws is something very operational, is something legal, regulatory, we need to go to my dear friend Madhu to get a view and then go ahead. It is not like this. I have learned, and many of you here will reinforce that view, I have learned all my HR, whether you call the OD interventions, you got L&D, these are the new terms which I am also getting used to it. In my call used to be training and development, but simple, now we talk all the techniques and the nomenclatures, doesn't matter, that is the need of the hour perhaps, but still I'm in the old era. But I think it's important that we need to understand, I think all the three speakers have said it, trust, respect, dignity, well-being. I think especially the topic which we are discussing today is preparing for the new labor codes. Maybe when we were designing this agenda, which was done with purpose, and still it's very relevant and apt. Maybe preparation at the time we were anticipating in October. Now perhaps it may be likely to go to next April, from 1st April 2021 to 2022. That is a likely trend what we see. But nevertheless, it's very important that as a corporates, as a students, as an academicians, as a CEOs, we need to understand that what is it is required. I think, I will just put it in 4 buckets. One is it something old wine in a new bottle, which government has done it, or is too much or too little? Or is it something going to an impact? Is it really trying to make doing business at ease, simplification? These are a couple of things which will crop up in mind. So I would take this context and I would start with dear friend Madhu. I mean, his name is Madhu. Madhu, to initiate discussion, because there's going to be an interactive discussion. The only thing we felt as a group was, since there is a framework we need to present very succinctly, what are these 4 labor codes, try to simplify, and what are the challenges you face, what are the benefits you have, are we seeing half glass full or is it half glass empty, what is some of the things so one is the framework, second was the implementation, third one is the challenges you face, and secondly some of the roadblocks which you may get, and also is it involve some change management, which was Suresh's point, a couple of things which we need to present it. Madhu, I would start with you, if you can share your PPT, the 4 slides, and just give a brief introduction, because I would request all the panelists to be brief in their questions, which I will be putting it.
Am I audible, sir? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Yes,
online. Thank you. Thanks for first of all for the invite, and in the memory of Mr. Dev, it is great to hear some of the keynote, both the keynote addresses, and then what we really need to do in his honor. And I am really glad to be part of this this session and to be among the most elite of the HR fraternity in the country today. And thanks for the opportunity. With that, I'll start. Yes, Mr. Dwaraknath, whether there is always this debate, right? Whether it is, isn't it the same wine in the old bottle? Is there anything that is being done that is different, etc.? I would only, no, I will not dwell too much on it, but just say that I think there are quite a few pointers, quite a few changes, which are really what the industry wanted. And also some of the changes also point to a desire of the government to get, for example, both the keynote speakers today were talking about dignity, etc., of the labor and workforce, and the government trying to include as much of the India's workforce. whatever you may call it, organized, unorganized, etc., to be within the confines, if not all of the labor laws, at least the social security. So I think I don't think it serves us well as HR and IR community to just dismiss it as old wine in the new bottle. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to alarm everyone and then saying there is too many changes, get yourself prepared. But there are changes, and some of the biggest changes should help us from a perspective, how do we comply, and how easy it is to comply? Is it essentially with the focus of government being ease of doing business with help? So with that context, I'll quickly move into what are the real issues, the real changes that need HR and IR fraternity to be prepared for. All the four codes together, there are general concepts which kind of changed quite a bit, which is wage definition. I think every one of us, more than 700 people I see on the who are listening to, I think everybody would have been aware of this, what this wage definition is. It definitely changes quite a few things. And as many of you fearful are kind of concerned is about the cost of some of the aspects of gratuity, for example, will go up, etc. It works both ways. We in the industry wanted, why there are 33 different definitions in 44 different labor laws. We wanted one. When government granted one, we are kind of now worrying why it was one. Right. So I think we need to be prepared for that. Every one of us needs to have a look at what are our wage structures at different levels. How is it going to impact? Another important concept that is definitely changing is the definition of who is an employee and who is a worker. Earlier we had this workman definition, which is defined in multiple laws in different ways. Now it is one uniform definition. There are a few changes according to the requirements of a code, but there's not many. There are not big changes. And who is a worker and who is an employee is going to impact. For example, the code on wages is applicable to all employees. It doesn't differentiate with workers. But if you go to IR is applicable to only to workers. This is, we know that is applicable to only to workers. We used to argue out saying I'm not in industry, so it doesn't apply to me. Is that possible? The way worker is defined today, can I exclude a section out of this? No, they are supervisory, managerial, they do administrative function. These are things that I think as IR and HR functionaries that we need to be doing a study for our employers or for our companies and then be prepared for. Similarly, who is an employer? There is no definition, the major change except that a small word contractor is also included in the definition. The liability of a principal employer, all of them are important. Definition of industry, etc. And that is going to change our big questions like service industries, whether it is IT, ITS, or retail establishment. Is it an industry, and are the workers eligible for protection of the IR code, for example? Is going to be debated. We might argue like we used to earlier, post the codes come into effect, but I think we need to be a little careful there. Fixed term employment, we kept asking for this for the last 50 years. Finally, that flexibility is there. It is defined into the code, not now it is there, and there are certain conditions attached to it. I think those who are seeking flexibility in their workforce, this is a good opportunity. Every one of us should understand what are the pros and cons of it, what are the preparation that we need, how much of our workforce can be FTE, etc. It's a good way to start preparing for the implementation of the code. Appropriate definition, it's kind of becoming again uniform across the law. For earlier, for example, payment of gratuity, if you're present in more than one state, then central government and the appropriate government, only the Central Labour Commissioner can come and ask you questions about gratuity. That will change now. So like that, there are subtle changes here and there. So you need to be in the context of your establishment, your company, you need to be a little careful about how you should know who is your appropriate government. Definitely there is a reduction in compliance burden. The number of, for example, if I were to read it from the Joint Secretary's presentation, number of acts from 29 acts, 1,232 sections to 480 sections. From central rules alone, if you take it 1,436 rules to around 401, Returns, there are about 31 returns. Now they are talking about one single return. Forms, 181 to 73. Registers, number of registers reduced from 84 to 8. It all depends on how the states are following up on this, but definitely there is a reduction in compliance. So one more thing I would like to find out here is cost of non-compliance is going to be
Mr. Damodaran, may I intervene? I think if you can slowly go through the 4 codes, we'll come back in detail little later.
Sure. So next slide, please. So IR is the biggest, I think the major impact of the change is in IR. Some of the requests that we had from industry perspective, for example, recognition of union. How do we register? Which are the unions that gets registered? Are all big changes. And the central government has already come with the rules with regards to how do you recognize the union as a sole negotiating and all that. States are, many states have followed up. About 4 or 5 states have followed up. I think we as HR fraternity is aware from the central like to avoid situations which turn to be violent. I think how well your GRC functions in your establishment, your factory will definitely change, and I think that's a positive change. But I hear some from the HR fraternity sometimes, is it really required? I already have this thing. I think we need to look at it a little more positively and adapt it to your requirement, or if you already have a process, adapt that to meet the requirements of the law. I think it will serve you well. Applicability from perspective of IR code, as I already discussed, industry means does it include all service sector as well? I would say yes, so we need to be careful about that. Standing orders, earlier, again, only to manufacturing it was applicable earlier, now it is applicable to all establishments which are employing more than 300. That will have an issue. How is it, therefore, how are these industries which might come into the fold of IR code and research required? The minimum notice period requirement now, and also the fact that the cases is again prepared for, and the 300 threshold limit height from 100 is a good thing. Well, that's where people say why the 300 also, why don't you allow the considering the constraints government was in, I think we should take it.
Ms. Damodaran, can we just go quickly and then we'll come back to you again to ask questions so that it will be more interactive. If you don't.
Yeah. So the code on wages, for example, biggest change is wage definition. We all are grappling with it, and I think we need to be next slide.
Next slide.
Yeah. So here I have listed national floor wages. For minimum wages is going to be a big one. Equal opportunity employer, it is not only gender based on men and women, the traditional gender, but it is all genders cannot be discriminated. And the discrimination earlier used to be only for payment of wages, now it is going to be recruitment as well. So that you need to be clear. Bonus could be multiple thresholds for each state. Those things will be prepared for reduction. So the earlier threshold was 34K, now it is all thresholds. Now we Next slide, please. Okay, the occupational safety, the big changes can be done because contract labor and core activity can be done. They are aware of what is the check. They are also employees important decision units. We have
Last one, please.
And all of those things you need to be prepared for. Next one, please. This will be the last slide, and I will yield back to Mr. Social Security. I don't see a major change except that the wage definition will have a huge impact on what is the contribution you're going to do for and what is your cost going to be for.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Madhu, I would request all the other panelists to kindly keep yourself on mute while Mr. Madhu is speaking. There's a lot of disturbance coming.
Okay. I think. Thank you, Madhu. Thank you, Madhu. It's very exhaustive and very well covered. I know the shortage of time, but you covered all the 4 labor codes. I just think a question to the panelists is, I know it's not easy to sum it up all the 4 labor codes in 4 slides, but Madhu has done his best to ensure we can dwell on it further in detail. But the point here I would like to go, it's, as I said, is no particular order. I just go to Mr. Srikanth Reddy. Given the fact that eventually labor codes are going to be the reality, I mean, if not today, it's going to happen. What is your view on the proposed labor codes, Mr. Reddy?
Good morning, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me and making me part of this session. I'll spend a couple of minutes on taking cue from the keynote speakers. In today's context, whatever we see is, as far as ER is concerned, probably, or we feel, is the tip of the iceberg itself. Be it in terms of the violence or some unrest that we see. So that's what is more evident, or in fact, as ER professionals or HR professionals, that is what we are glued to see. But what we inadvertently ignore is the iceberg underneath the water. And that's where probably we all need to look upon. The keynote speakers have even addressed. So one of the important aspects, the reasons for this violence are the distrust is the sense of recognition from the employers about bringing that equality. While the equality is explicitly mentioned, it's not about the financial equality that is being talked about. It's all beyond that. How do you build that trust in terms of ensuring that we partner with the workforce with dignity and respect? So while we call about this as a big picture, so what did this labor codes do about as far as bringing that equality is concerned? So when I look at it, the financial equality, when we look at that part of it, today we have almost 50 crore working population in India, both organized and unorganized. So while the organized sector is more or less well defined in the existing laws, the unorganized sector has brought the labor codes into the ambit of it, wherein the minimum wages and the social security have been extended. So that's one big change probably that has been brought into this. And it's for the maybe regulators or the employers to see that how this unorganized sector, which constitutes bulk of the population, get the benefits of these labor codes and the intent part of it. Coming to the next part of it, as an organization, what is it that we look at once the labor codes are implemented is probably what are those implications that these labor codes are going to give to us. So one big factor each one of us as an employer look at is probably the financial implications that these are going to give to us, and then the procedural or the processes changes. So while we dwell upon this in the course of discussion, as an employer, what are those financial implications that these labor codes are going to give us is what that we need to be prepared and then look forward. And those process changes from the employer processes. And the third important aspect is how do you build capability on our teams to handle this going forward. I'm sure if you are able to touch upon these things as the discussion progresses, we would be able to get more light on this. Thank you. So you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. You have very succinctly put it. Just to build on it, Mr. Ramkishore, I just go to the very quickly. You said so. You view these new labor codes. Is it too much or too little? Is there anything they missed it? Before we get into the other bits, what Mr. Reddy has alluded, which I'm going to ask Mr. Tripathi and Mr. Singh, is there something, is it too much or is it too little, or is it a recommendation which some of them have missed or could have been addressed?
Thank you very much for having me over on this panel, on a very distinguished panel on this very solemn occasion, Mr. Dwarkanath, and thank you for that question. On the balance, the biggest thing about these labor codes is that they are happening at all. for all of us who have been in IR, in ER and HR for the last 3 decades and more, we have been watching, making our points of view known whenever we have been asked for, right from the Second National Commission of Labour onwards. There was a crying need to consolidate laws based on purpose rather than based on the industry or the sector, which is what was happening till now when you talk about the 44 labour codes, out of which 29 have now been combined. So the big thing is that this has happened at all, and we are at the cusp of these being implemented. As you said, it will happen today, it will happen tomorrow, but that's a very big thing. So the positives are, yes, once there's a focus on the purpose, which the keynote speakers also spoke about, the implementation becomes easy. The metrics of effective implementation also become very easy to track. That's a very big achievement. The positives, yes, a lot of recommendations from the Second National Commission of Labour, where many of us have contributed our views, have come in. The ease of compliance, the reduction, for all of us who have been in this field, we have spent more time in the documentary compliance, sometimes at the cost of substantive compliance. Today, the focus is back on substantive compliance. So documentation, the penalties are there, but the penalties are more for substantive non-compliance rather than for documentation. The ease of compliance is definitely improved, whether it's in terms of returns, registers, notices, whatever. Other thing we all know about is common definitions of worker, definitions of industry, definitions of wage, all that is going to be very well. The biggest thing for me, if you ask me, of course, there's a little, what shall I say, confusion on it still, but it looks to me as if the definition of contract labor act has been with little sharpness. Employers who are employing people for their own work, not for work in or in connection with somebody else, might be taken out of the definition of the contract worker. I mean, Mr. Madhu Damodaran can clarify more on it, but if that is so, it's a very, very big quantum jump from the point of view of safe employment creation. It's going to be huge from the company's point, from the country's point of view. And what could have, of course, there are a few things which we as employers currently are battling, as Mr. Srikanth Reddy said, that is from the point of view of costs, especially in today's current scenario of the pandemic and all that. So that is there, but that will happen. That is something which will get resolved. I wish that, monetary limit for definition of a workman had been brought in. I know I'm talking from an employer's point of view. I do understand the rationale behind definition of a workman, but somewhere I feel that a certain monetary limit could have been put for definition of a workman, because beyond that monetary limit, people have a certain safety in terms of their earnings alone would have guaranteed them that safety. That is one. The second thing which I would talk about is, this is again a little contrarian view. As you all know, earlier the notice of strike only applied to public utility services. Today, the notice of strike applies to all organizations. It may be great from an employer's point of view, but particularly when we talk about, today's the reason why we are all assembled here today to commemorate the sacrifice of Mr. Awanish Dev. In that solemn context,
okay, but what I am able to hear.
A strike is basically a legitimate expression of protest, and the way we have today with the notice of strike, with prevention of a strike when there's a conciliation in progress, it is not possible to have a legal strike in the country. There, I feel we probably are choking off the legitimate expression, a safety valve of protest. My own view would have been, and it's again a personal view, my own view would have been to have brought in a consensus of strike through a secret ballot, a strike ballot, and then allow people to go on strike, subject of course to other things like once it is in conciliation, the strike cannot happen and all that, may have been a better view. This is in general what I feel, but overall, yes, a lot of positives. You're on mute, sir.
You're on mute. Yeah, I know. Let me try. Okay. No, but you are able to hear on this phone or? ठीक है, देख लेंगे.
इसमें भी चल रहा है सर.
इसमें बोल रहे हम नहीं थे, पेन आ गया.
Avinash, I would request you to please unmute Dwarkanath sir.
Kindly don't lock me out. I have gone through Garavos in my time. This is another Garavo I am experiencing now. Sitting there, able to hear but not able to speak. I can't run this panel, please. I have experienced Garavo about 50 years back. I am experiencing different types of Garavo now. So, Ms. Ramkishore, I think you talked about the strikes, lockdown. I picked up 3 points. I mean, I don't want to paraphrase and summarize it. One of the things which, simplification, what Madhu has spoken about it, and what Ms. Reddy had talked about the respect and dignity, and then you talked about the purpose, I mean, all of you, which is in line with what the keynote speakers have said it for employee relations. Labor code should not be seen as tactical or technical. Labor code should be seen as part of your human people strategy. Tone at the top. It should start from the chairman of a company. It should not start from the factory manager or from employee relations. That is what I want to send this message on behalf of all the panelists to the corporate managers. And Saklin, as Mr. Siddique talked about learning agility, please don't think that you learned a lot. We, all of us sitting here, have not learned. We are learning and relearning. And similarly, for the academicians, it's time for them to change the curriculum to meet the current requirements. So, we will dwell on it further, and we'll go back to Madhu little later on the contract labor issues which you have raised it, Mr. Ramkishore. But let me move on. Otherwise, we will not have a holistic view. Let me move to my friend Suresh, who is also been in public sector and private sector and working with a big organization like Tata Steel, and Tata is an advisor. Suresh, from your perspective, we were discussing, one is, what are the challenges, what are the pluses and minuses? People have said we can keep on talking. We are not here looking for a solution-based approach in this, but you are coming from a strategic perspective. Since we are talking about a strategy, which is labor code is part of this strategy. From your perspective, do you think we touched all the stakeholders in implementing these labor changes? Do you think there was a change management which is required, which is only done half? It requires some changes. Can you quickly throw your wisdom and experience on this aspect, please?
Thank you, Dr. Garu. Thank you very much for also having me on the panel. And the question that you asked, whether all the stakeholders have been touched, and I think largely yes, except that if you look at any change in law, starts from the thinking about requirement as to why there is a need, and then the government, which is the body which enacts the law, that the government becomes the key stakeholder. Then everybody else who is impacted by it, so be it the union, be it the employer, be it employee, anyone, and then a whole lot of administrative authorities, who are meant to implement. So if you look at, this being a major change, while the central government took the central stage in terms of bringing about these changes, because they are the ones who are responsible for it, they did involve a lot of people in the process of making these changes. And I think from Tata Steel perspective, I can say that yes, right from beginning, we also were involved in contributing in whatever way, because there have been many laws in the country which started off with what we practiced that we were doing. And I'm very happy to see one or two points which we have done here in Tata Steel have actually been incorporated as a part of the law. Like we looked at the contract workers and their security, safety, security and social security point of view. That's something that we had done, and actually it has fructified into this. So I'm saying that while it is not just that the laws are enacted and somebody has to implement. There are a whole lot of things which will also evolve when they change management as a change management process, because it's a change. So while the central government is the one which initiates, I don't know if there is a body which is actually reviewing the whole thing in terms of its true implementation in the country across, where the involvement of all the stakeholders has to come in, including the industry bodies, the unions, the employers, and employees, and everybody else. So it's not just one part in terms of change management, but also going forward reviewing. Because whenever there's a change, there are a whole lot of things which involve because of the impact of change. So there has to be somebody who has to monitor, review, and ensure that keeping the context in mind, what further changes are required. So I'm saying as a complete change management process, so we need to have our central body with representations which should ensure that it gets implemented as a change management process in the country. And it should have proper representation from all the stakeholders. Right. So I don't see that at this point in time.
A great insights. I'm glad that some of the best practices of Tata Steel have been incorporated. Voices of the people have been heard. I think, just for the benefit of all the audience, Mr. Ramkishore has briefly touched. This process has started nearly 22 years back. This Mr. Raghu Varma's second National Labour Commission was instituted by the NDA government on October 15, 1999. So ultimately, it took so many years. Wage code was passed in 2019, rest of the codes in 2020, as rightly alluded by Madhu. Now, we have started. I'm glad that the government has done this. So there is a positivity, there's half glass full, and it is a reality which is going to happen. There's no question about it. The question is only when. But now then, switching on to another veteran, to hear from my friend Suresh, who has got CII and Tata, represents the voice of the associations and the employers. Now switching it to a public sector guru, Mr. R.P. Singh, with the scope, with the IFCO, which is a huge organization. And I heard his presentations in terms of employee relations, which are some of them very, very insightful, and they've done a great pioneer work. But succinctly, for the sake of discussion, dear friend Mr. Singh, the question based on what has been said now, we talked about this is inevitable, we talked about it's going to be implemented. Do you see, as a very veteran practicing manager, do you foresee a change in the IR scenario post-implementation of the new labor code? Sir, you are muted. Please unmute Mr. R.P. Singh.
Yes. Yes. Are you able to hear me now? Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. And I must. इसको mute करना क्या? The problem with me here is that my computer is not giving adequate voice, so I had connected with my mobile, and now there is a problem of echo. So okay. I don't know. Are you able to hear me on this computer?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So because
you sir on your computer, you can switch off your mobile.
And I must express my sincere gratitude to the organizers, to Maruti and to Dwarka for remembering me on this great occasion. When we talk of industrial relations, we are talking of relationship between the humans. And when we talk of relationship between the humans, then of course, empathy is most important. That we have to always keep in mind. Now, coming to the change in industrial relations scenario, post these implementation of new labor code, my sense is that there is bound to be a change. At present, the industrial relations was largely confined to manufacturing organizations, large manufacturing organizations. The new age industries like software industry and outsourcing and all that, and business process outsourcing, etc., didn't have an IR related issue. Of course, they have their own systems, their generation is different, but when it comes to employer-employee relationship in a large manufacturing organization, the organized trade unions have been in operation for several decades, and it really matters whether you are able to sail through properly and smoothly in dialogue with them, in taking them into confidence and all that. Now, with this change in the new labor code, certain newer dimensions have been introduced. The first is that unorganized labor, the gig workers, the platform workers, etc., have also been covered within the scope of the new labor code. So I think a time will come when they will also start organizing, and the importance of employer-employee relationship will further increase. Even in the so-called new age industries, the possibility is that now the employees will become more conscious and they will start organizing, and this scenario will change. The other aspect is the introduction of the concept of sole negotiating agent, which was not there earlier. See, we used to bargain with trade unions. There were multiple trade unions. There was a concept of recognition also, but that was all voluntary. That was under the code of discipline and code of conduct and all that. But now the law itself says trade union having 51% or more membership will be declared as the sole negotiating agent. So this is going to give a very different dimension, and I think there will be a change in the industrial relations scenario because of this. Then there are sole negotiating councils also. There is a provision for making sole negotiating councils. See, industrial relations, apart from whatever pragmatism we adopt, at times we have to depend upon the route of adjudication and arbitration. So one good thing under the new dispensation would be that the multiplicity of adjudicating authorities have been removed. So now there will be no labor court, only industrial tribunals and conciliation officer. All this court of inquiry and board of conciliation, all that is gone. So that also is likely to bring about some change in the IR scenario. Apart from that, see, the requirement of notice in case of strike and lockout till now was only with reference to the public sector, utility services. This has now been made mandatory for all the industries, and the period has also been increased from 14 days to 2 months. So these are some of the new things that have been brought, which will have an impact on the IR scenario. And a very encouraging trend that I have seen in this law is recognition of and promotion of voluntary arbitration. The concept of arbitration agreement was not there earlier. If the government wanted, it could refer something to arbitration, but now under this new dispensation, you will have a provision for entering into an arbitration agreement between the union and the management, and the matter could be referred to arbitration. That is also going to give you a very changed perspective as far as industrial relations is concerned. I think there would be very many other things that, as Suresh has rightly said, these things will evolve over a period of time. So hopefully it will evolve for the better. I mean, the approach of the government today is positive. And when we talk of industrial relations, it is not only the union and the management, it is also the government whose role becomes very important. So I think there will be a change, and that would be a positive change. Thank you.
Dwarka Garu, you have been hit out again.
Dwarka sir, we could hear you a few seconds back.
Yeah, no? Yeah.
I would request the coordinator to please unmute Dwarka Nath sir. Avinash, can you do that for us?
Yeah. Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you please allow me to mute myself and unmute, as again at the cost of repetition, otherwise we'll lose the flow. Please, we can request other panelists which they're doing it, you can mute them, but we should allow in a panel discussion at least the coordinator to be unmuted. Thank you. I think RP, you have captured it very well, and I think there are some, if you see half glass full, there are many benefits you see out of it. Simplification of the law, doing the business easy, as everybody said. It is more from a regulatory environment to more customer friendly environment. I just want to see how compliance used to be implemented. Many years ago, I was in the factory. One day, a factory inspector came when I was the factory head. He said, please show me your whitewashing register. I said, we don't do whitewashing, we do oil painting. He said, no, but you need to do whitewashing once in a year. I said, I do oil painting once in a year. This is a healthcare company. No, you are not complying with the law. Please write, I will take it up. You see, that is the old archaic view. So building on it, before I go to Madhu on the contract labor which you raised, I think people have talked about the nature of work, kind of workers. We talked about gig workers, platform workers, full-time employees, all have been now defined, and there is a commonality in terms of wages, employees, appropriate government, and so on. So a lot of efforts have been made. This continue to have. No doubt this will be a flourishing business for people like Damodar, Madhu and others, but that is a part of the life. But there are 4 things which have changed in the future of work. One is the globalization, supply chain. You don't have to get the raw material from here. You can get a chip from China or from US or Taiwan. The second bit is digitalization, which is happened in automation, which moved to digitalization. Third thing is consumerization. It is not just a mass. Some of them are required, like fertilizers required. Some, but there are some passenger vehicles are required. Steel is required. But there are many other things which have become what the customer wants it. The fourth is the differential generations. So keeping this, focusing on digitalization and talking about the whitewash where you don't maintain a register, and then when we produce the registers under Bonus Act ABC, they said, it is computerized. We don't recognize the computer statements. We wanted a signature manual statement. So we have moved away from that. I think it's become very customer friendly, which is heartening to hear. But the point I just want to make it, putting to Suresh, I'm not going in a particular order, to my friend Suresh, do you think this successful implementation in terms of this labor codes, whenever it's implemented, it's a matter of time, I suppose, Suresh, is it going to, how do you think it's going to help in terms of digitalization and all that? Do you think it will aligned with the technology, whatever the changes have been brought in terms of e-modules of training, etc., in terms of communication, making people to aware?
That's right. I think one very important element of change this time, at this point in time in the history, is digital and the technology. And I think if you look at the spirit of these changes, is that instead of somebody supervising compliance, can you go towards self-compliance? I think that's one of the part of making it simpler. Technology, digitalization plays a major role.
Okay.
So I would say that is digital definitely, and technology intervention is going to be a major player in movement of a shift of direction of the government from compliance, which is being seen, overseen by the inspectors and everybody else, to you deciding yourself. Those who will adopt it early. So I'm just saying that those who adopt it early will also set the tone for all these changes going in the right direction. If it is difficult in the beginning for self-compliance, being self-compliant, then everybody will put it across as not effectively implemented. Something adoption will be worse.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Also, yes, I just wanted to add here the second, that for playing any game, everyone should be very clear about rules. The more clear you are, the better you can play. And hence, ensuring that every part of the change and the new laws is understood by people very clearly. I think there again, digital comes in very handy in terms of how you can take it to people. Today, everyone is quite digitally savvy, and hence it can be taught and taken to people. So it becomes that much more effective.
Thank you. Thank you, Suresh. You very succinctly covered it. Mr. Ramkishore, just switching the gears very quickly. I think we are running out of time. We need to ask some questions from the audience. One of the things, what are the opportunity challenges from your industry perspective? Can you just very quickly say a few things about what you feel about the industry perspective?
Oh, yes. So there are opportunities. Now here, these opportunities have come from not just the change of the labor codes, but also from the scenario that we are in currently. It's very difficult to say which has contributed what. But the first opportunity is in optimizing processes. The impending adoption of the labor codes has forced all of us to look at our processes, our HR processes, our policies, etc. But not just that, even the current scenario of the workplace, workforce, all undergoing a dramatic shift has made us look at our optimizing of our processes. It also means determining our optimum staff mix, taking advantage of the formalization of the fixed term contract agreement that is given in this code. Focus on compliance and bringing in as the digitalization. Let me add here that digitalization is not just going to be, it's just something that would be a handy tool, but it's going to be an absolute imperative as far as all HR processes are concerned. HR has to move completely into digitalization, right? Not only from a compliance perspective, but also from a perspective of giving the most optimum employee experience perspective, which is going to be very important going forward. So, yeah, and finally, and from my point of view, again, in the context of the reason why we are assembled here, for too long, HR and ER have been seen to be separate different streams altogether. In the last 5 years, this has been happening. The pandemic and the reform in labor laws has somewhere again harmonized it's put the human back in the human resource. It's for every one of us in HR to look at human not at segment leaders,
staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Madhu. I'll just switch the gears and come if you can very quickly cover. I know it's a very difficult subject to capture, but people have raised here in the panel itself, talked about ease of doing business, a compliance orientation to customer friendly, digitalization is required. There are, as Mr. Singh said, there are many changes which are welcome, but there are always roadblocks which we have to get over. One of the things which Mr. Reddy talked about is ticking the bomb in terms of contract labor. Can you briefly tell us the impact on contract labor engagement, be it CL or a core activity or a licensing regiment where PE does not need a registration? Can you briefly, in a minute or two, can you please cover this? Because this is one thing people are worried. It's okay to say gig workforce, platform workforce, full-time employment, but the contract labor is still, has it been resolved, or is there any satisfactory solution has been provided under the revised labor codes?
Sorry, I was on mute. The attempt by the government in twofold. One, the industries generally misuse of contract labor. They wanted to kind of look at it, and then is there a way to legally earlier laws, the CLRA ASIS provided for it, but I think there was no clarity on what is core activity, etc., except for Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So that same thing has been adopted into the code. So there is a specific section that you cannot hire contract labor in core activity. Having said that, is it completely shut option? I don't think so. They have given 3 exceptions. One is the where it is usually being conducted by the contract labor, you are allowed to continue. 2 is that requirement of a surge in business requirement. 3 is seasonal person. I think typically in these areas, if a principal employer were to employ contract labor, I think that should be accepted. That's what, and they have not provided, the earlier CLRA had a provision for abolition of contract labor, which is not there in the current Act. So government does not really intend to say that. The earlier approach when 1970 law came was, the objective, if you read a CLRA at that time, is that eventually abolish contract labor by itself. I think now the reality is we cannot get away with it. It is one of the largest employment generator, and probably it is the step in the workforce, organized workforce. I think that's good. I don't think we need to be really careful that we might not be able to engage contract labor at all in core activity. I think it will be possible still, but I think all of us need to rationalize. If you're really over dependent on contract labor, there needs to be a need for rationalization, is how I would put it. Second, the biggest problem with contract labor was the way it was like, the whole regimen governing it was pretty tedious, with the principal employer registration based on that, the contractor taking a license. For example, I am part of the largest employer in the country. I have a company with a license right? So that, and even for a large employer who's spread across multiple countries, this is a tedious task for every location. So they're moving the licensing regime around the contractor rather than the principal employer, but giving a little bit of responsibility to the principal employer to only to ensure he doesn't hire somebody who is not licensed. That's how I would put it. I think it is getting easier, but you need to understand what are the nuances of it and how it will work. And the threshold numbers, early or 5 and 10 in some states, is based on the number. That is not moved. It is based on the number overall as principal employer or contractor as employer, irrespective of whether it's principal employer. So that is careful. Liabilities of the principal employer, for example, there were ambiguities based on provisions that we were all used to be dependent on some other high court decisions or Supreme Court decisions. Now I think it's been made very clear wages if ultimately, if the contractor were to fail, the liability is on the principal employer. I think that's been made very clear. But at the same time, contractor is included in the definition of employer. which means that at the first level, you as a principal employer is a protection if you engage the right contractor who is able to discharge his responsibility as a contractor. Then you are there itself, you have a layer of protection. I think overall the government's attempt is to kind of deny the opportunities of exploitation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I think I like this when you said that the word abolition has been ultimately removed. It's trying to be more friendly. These are great messages coming from you. Thank you. I know it's very difficult to do it in few minutes, but you covered it quite exhaustively. Mr. Reddy, I think, you know, this whole is preparing the labor for the implementation of labor code. What is your suggested approach from an organization perspective as a practicing manager? You had the benefit of serving the services in armed forces and then 21 years in the corporate world. Very quickly to give you, how do you make it ensure there is a smooth transition from some of the change management processes, what Suresh has been alluding earlier?
Yeah, thank you for that. So there are three things that probably we as a practicing manager or an organization need to look into it. So these changes that have been enumerated have three-dimensional approaches that as far as implication is concerned. The first big as an employer is in terms of the financial implication that the overall codes that are going to give us by virtue of the definition of the change in the wage definition that has come up, and also some of the other implications, certain other provisions have been brought in, be it the floor wages that has been talked of, which will have a cutting across implication as far as raising the minimum wage is concerned. So one big aspect from the organization would be in terms of relooking at our own policies and process as far as comp structure is concerned, and realigning the entire structure whenever it is required with a future concept as far as the wage definition, new wage definition is concerned. So that's an area where we have to look into it. While I say that we need to look into it, I also wish to add a disclaimer here that the law has evolved over a period of time. If you see that the first Factories Act has been enacted way back in 1881, and then we are there are subsequently a lot of changes have happened. On similar lines, much of these acts are almost 5 decades old. So the law has been evolving over a period of time. So today, whatever the changes that have been brought in will go through the test of time and then will get evolved over a period of time. So my piece of advice would be that don't be over cautious about the changes that are being happening and then do drastic changes. On the compliance factor. While we talk about compliance, it's equally important that we ensure that our own team members are made ready for the changes that are going to happen. While I mean team members, it's not only the employees, the HR folks that is there. It's equally important that the unions are all made capable and made understand about the changes that are going to happen, because they are going to have a repercussion in the overall ER scenario. So that's where it's equally important as an employer that we build capability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. I agree. Thank you. Before we go to panelists, to go to the audience, I just want to, Mr. Singh, I just want to ask you one question. What is your advice to HR professionals and youngsters who are entering into this arena with your vast experience regarding this whole this strategy on IR, the thinking on IR? What is your one two-liner, what you want to give as an advice?
Dwarka, we have been talking about HR people. This is an area where strategy had been adopted since inception. And when you are going to talk about industrial relations, you are going to deal with the trade unions, your own knowledge really matters. Because I have seen in my 45 years of experience that whenever negotiations take place, the trade union leaders sitting across the table are much more knowledgeable and have a lot of data with them for making negotiations tilt into their favor, towards their favor. So for new HR professionals, yes, of course, all developmental aspects are equally important and they cannot be ignored, but one has to really pay attention to this aspect, and now the learning has also to be focused towards the new developments that are taking place in the field of service laws and labor laws. So I would request all of them to pay attention to the new changes. Of course, the employers are also taking steps. All the new recruits are being provided in-house training about the new changes that are going to take place. I would suggest that the educational institutions also change their syllabi according to this. And for the new generation HR professionals, I think employee relations is going to be the core of success. So they must focus on this area.
Thank you very much. It's a great pearls of wisdom coming from you. I'm sure that other panelists also share this. Now, can I just request the organizers, any questions from the audience?
Sir, we have few questions.
Yeah.
I'll read that out for you.
Yeah.
So the question is, how to avoid multiplicity of registered union, rather representative union, and the trade unions have to be well aware of the impact of 4 labor codes. Are they 100% clear? The question has been asked by Mr. Kiran Kumar Chaudhary.
Okay. Anyone would like to ask one of them? I leave the choice. The question is multiplicity of union, whether trade union leaders have been properly educated in this respect. Anyone, I'm not picking up. Anyone would you like to say very quick answer, please? Yeah. Yeah. Please unmute.
Yes, Singh. As I told you earlier, multiplicity of trade unions as far as registration is concerned, there is not much change in the law. There are some changes, but they are not in fact going to inhibit registration of new unions. But the very concept of a sole negotiating agent introduced in the law is going to impact multiplicity of trade unions. And apart from that, it also depends upon how the employers behave. Yesterday years, strategy used to be, barring a few enlightened organizations like Tata's, the study used to be that let there be no unions, and if at all there are trade unions, then let there be many unions so that they keep on fighting amongst themselves, and we sign an agreement with one who is liable. But the experience shows that those who have practiced one union in one industry have really been successful and sustainable. We in IFCO, as a matter of practice, have made it very clear that there has to be only one union. And what happens when you talk about general matters, individual branches may be there, some union takes and all, but this concept of recognition of a sole bargaining agent has been practiced by us even when the law was not there. It was only sort of voluntary kind of. Now at least the law also has come into your support, and I sense that in times to come, the organizations, the employers will also realize the importance, and they would prefer to deal with one union. The stronger, the better.
Thank you. Very well said. I think it requires a lot of education to the union leaders. It's a great example what IFCO has followed, Tata's have done, Aditya Birla Group is doing, or L&T or GUESS or anyone for that matter. It's a great. So let us hear the second question, please. Ladli?
So the second question is, just a second. The second question is, what would be the impact of additional burden of PF for organization with respect to employees drawing wages above 15,000?
Okay. Yes, Madhu? Can you unmute?
whatever we have done a study on definition, I think there is this conception when people are being paid above 15,000, what to do with that. Threshold, as per law, and there is a Supreme Court decision here, as per law, if you are paying up to 15,000, what you do after 15,000 if an employer is your discretion. So because of the change in wage definition, if the cost of fear, if you are covering for people above 15, drawing above 15,000, you have a choice to but if salary range with the definition cover, if you don't have complicated wage structure at the 50% wage limit that the wage definition is talking about, you might end up saving PF contribution as well. I'm just giving a hint. So it all depends on how the wage structure is.
Thank you. Thank you. One last question of anyone, please.
Yes, sir. So there's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
How much competitive advantage will new labor codes provide to India compared to other Asian manufacturing focused nations?
Okay.
Can I take
all the three? Yeah. Yes, please, Ram Kishore.
So, yeah, most certainly a competitive advantage will come in from the fact that the labor laws have become simplified, focused on purpose rather than on sectors. It would be easy for anyone dealing with the country to understand, to comprehend the laws, to understand what is demanded of them, what are the expectations from them. But having said that, we are already many years behind, right? I'll give you just a couple of other countries which have the same colonial past as us. Kenya, back in 2007, I'm talking about even before that, 2004, Kenya brought in an employment act which combined all the multiple labor laws into one employment act. Pakistan, which has inherited exactly our own labor laws from the British. Back in 1969, combined the Trade Union Act and Industrial Relations Act and made the Industrial Relations Ordinance into the market law. And that was converted in 2010 into the Industrial Relations Act of Pakistan. So countries have already moved towards that. For us, competitive advantage doing now is actually cash. But having done that, it's really a good start. We need to do a lot more in terms of making it easy for doing business. In terms of putting promises which we maintain and make sure that there are surprises for investors. But yeah, this is definitely a very good start.
Thank you. Any other last question, please? Largely, I just want to ask Mr. Reddy and Ms. Suresh Tripathi.
So there's one question.
Yeah.
While appointing fixed-term employee, do we need to consider experience level rather than paying same wages to new fixed-term employee? What does the code say about it?
It's a very specific question. Yes, Madhu. Please unmute him.
Sorry. So the definition of fixed-term employee definitely brings in that if the fixed-term employee is on the same lines or providing the same work of similar nature, same work of similar nature is the term used, and he has to be given all the benefits on par with the employee who is on your permanent pay. Now, the definition, I'm just going to do nuances. Definition is only listed in Social Security Code and IR Code, but the definition of what is same or similar nature of work is only there in code. So we need to kind of do some interpretation there. If you are hiring a fixed-term employee who's of the same profile and same kind of work of this, there is no restriction on not hiring. You can continue to hire, but you may have to pay them all the benefit. Now, this benefit is only statutory benefit or beyond that statutory benefits. For example, if for your regular employee you are giving a medical cover of 10 lakhs, are you going to give your fixed-term employee also? I think if you ask me literally what is written on the law, you need not. But I think that will subject to a lot of interpretation.
Okay, that basically you say you got a lot of opportunity to litigate, and this will help with professionals like you. One message before I conclude in next 1 minute. Mr. Reddy, would you like to give one message to the youngsters?
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the big challenge from the attracting the young talent towards inclination towards ER profile is one of the big challenge that we see today in as an HR fraternity. Today, most of our young generation look towards the finer processes that are an integral part of the HR as a way of career. I think one of the big messages which this forum, through this forum, which we all need to give to the young professionals or the students is about to recollect the fundamentals when not speaking to make knowledge of fundamental functional knowledge labor laws for us. Have an in-depth knowledge and build on your career on these fundamentals. Once you are able to assimilate this, probably
thank you.
Concentrate the young generation.
Thank you very much. Before we conclude, last but not the least, Suresh Garu, your message to this, as Ms. Sindhike said, learning agility, learn, unlearn, continuous learning for the corporate professionals with a vast experience over 40 years, both public sector, private sector, and with as an advisor currently to Tata. Please give your message to the corporate managers, those who are in service. What is one message which says, based on this pandemic and the labor codes, one message on employee relations to these and to these corporate colleagues?
So I think my message would be that the laws are basically made for creating a right kind of environment for everyone to exist simultaneously in a situation where everyone gains. Now, initially when we join and learn laws for only implementing those laws. But as you grow in the organization, as you grow as a leader, as a professional, you also need to make changes in the law. You should be the contributor of making changes in the law, because that's exactly what is needed out of you. But unless we have learned, implemented, understood the spirit behind it, we will not be able to make any contribution towards making any changes, either be it law or the direction of law. And as a seasoned leaders, we need to understand foundations, fundamentals before we can make a change in the direction. Hence, it's very, very, very important for every professional to understand what is existing today, see what is the purpose, where are we going, because the environment changes over a period of time, and hence make a contribution in making those changes at that point in time. So this is very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the pearls of wisdom. Panelists, thank you very much. We had a great, interesting session. I'm sorry we have to close it. We have already exceeded our time because of the situation. So I would, just to close, the employee relations is both an art and science. Labor relations form very key element of this employee relations. Tone at the top is important. If you want to succeed, as all of you said, you need to be compassionate leaders, and pandemic has taught us much more, that you need to show empathy and compassion. As Ms. Suresh Narayan said, it is no longer factory premises or office premises which constitutes the employment. It goes beyond much. Notional theory of extension of employment is extended to your bedroom now. So that is the reality. So change with the times, adopt to digitalization, understand the outside in view, and then you will be able to implement. If you see all the labor code in a holistic view, educate people, including the union leaders and others. Do not exploit people at the cost of just a cost. You need to get the balance between the lives and livelihood, also between the cost optimization. You need to have, if I to conclude, embrace art of tough love, tough on issues but soft on people. Then you will be able to implement, prepare well, and implement the labor code. If you got any roadblocks, you're always ability to change with the change management processes. With these few words, Thank you very much to all the audience for their attention. Thank you, panelists. It's great to have you. Wish you all the best. Please stay safe and well. Now, over to Musra. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, the esteemed panelists, for presenting your perspective before all of us. Your insights have provided clarity over a lot of points and added value to the sessions today. So thank you very much. And now over to Ladli for the next student panel discussion, which is going to be very exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, panelists, for the very insightful discussion. So now we are moving towards the most energetic and exciting section of today's discussion, is the student panel discussion. Today we have with us 12 very young and enthusiastic students from the premier B schools of India who would be speaking about the future of work. So the pandemic has become a catalyst for us to reimagine what we want the future of work to be. For the 3 billion digital workers on the planet, let us listen from the panel their views around it. But before we do that, I would like to take this privilege to introduce our moderator for today, Dr. G.P. Rao. Dr. G.P. Rao has worked with SAIL, JK Group, Birlas, and Reliance Group in India and Malaysia. He is a Master in Commerce, Public Administration, Social Work and Business Management. He has a degree in law and received an honorary PhD, and he is recipient of several awards in India, Malaysia, Singapore and Sri Lanka. He is associated as advisor or office bearer with Rotary International, Business Network International and various other organizations. He is the founder of GPR HR Consulting LLP. Welcome, sir, and over to you. I would, before we proceed, I would just like to introduce you to the student panel as well. We have Dr. Arpita from NMIMS Mumbai. We have Mr. Mahendra Raju from TIS Mumbai, Mr. Aditya Gregory from Liba Chennai, Mr. Aman Srivastav from IIM Trichy, Mr. Snehal Chandra from IIM Ranchi, Ms. Nitika from IMI Delhi, Ms. Bhargavi from MDI Gurgaon, Ms. Kritika from XLRI Jamshedpur, Mr. Vyom Dhaval from SIBM Pune, Ms. Nidhi from XISS Ranchi, Mr. Akarshan from XIM Bhubaneswar, and Ms. Sindhuja from SCMHRD Pune. Welcome everyone, and over to you, Dr. G.P. Rao.
Thank you, Ladli. We are starting the session a bit late. No issues. We have an agile panel, 12 students, best students from the best colleges. So discuss about something called future of work. So I was talking to the students, they said, sir, actually it's not future of work, because work doesn't have a future like you have a bright future or not a bright future. It's the future shape of work, future state of work. So that is how they said, it's not future work, it is future state of work. That's wonderful. So let's not waste time in any formalities or setting the contest and all. We are going to discuss what is work, and why it is changing, if it is changing, what kind of changes, and finally, what can we do? How do we prepare ourselves to manage that changed work, or leverage that, or we will set how the work should be. So all that will come at the fourth thing. So we have got 4 teams, as Ladli said. So I will go by, I will name them as 1, 2, 3, 4 teams, 3 people each. So whenever I ask a question, I will say group 1. I know one of you will answer. You have the discipline, I know. So let's start. According to you, what is work? Just let's start. Simple. What is, when you say future of work or future state of work, what is work? Let's group 1. Yeah, unmute and say, anyone.
Okay. Good afternoon. The age-old definition of
work is that any process or action that adds value to the end goal or a product for which the worker receives compensation. That is the age-old definition. But in the future, the definition of work will soon include the social impact of the work, the meaningfulness of the work, the perception of that work by the society, and its fairness in compensation. So to put it very simply, it is any action that is useful to society, viewed favorably by society, which is fairly compensated and allow the worker to feel that they have contributed tangibly.
Oh, wonderful definition. Yeah. Yeah, let's look at group 2. What do you think? What is work? How do you define work?
Yeah.
Group 2?
Thank you for. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So from our group, the definition of work has evolved over time. So let's start with the different perspective of work to define work. So starting with the most obvious definition. So work, that is the dictionary definition. So work means something to do with physical or mental effort in order to achieve something. So is it the complete definition of work? I don't think so in the current context. So let's look at economic perspective. So there the work is sought as a paid employment, the exchange service of money. But then if we have to define in social context, work can be defined as activity or task that produces something of value to other people. No matter how the small value is, it may or may not be interesting or rewarding or satisfying. Traditionally, work has been a one-sided transactional process, but now in the current setting, work is an experience, a relationship, or doing something with a sense of purpose. For an individual, it can be lead to economic self-sufficiency, social interchange, social status, self-esteem, and identity. But for organization, work is something that resources do in order to achieve something. So therefore, to sum it up, in today's and organization context, work is a comprehension of self which provides the foundation for people to develop a sense of purpose and mission that motivates the engagement and performance and help them transcend their own interests and at the same time contribute to organization and society as whole. Thank you.
Wonderful. I mean, you see, when you define work, the value of work will improve. You will get delighted. You have pride in doing something. So wonderful. Let's understand from group 3.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Vyom Dhawal Bhatt from SIBM Pune. Talking about work, so right from all in a day's work to having your work cut out for you, a lot of idioms have tried to give meaning to this crucial aspect of one's life. For a very long time, work would essentially mean just a job or a means to earning a living or satisfying certain basic needs. But at the next stage, work evolved from just being what you do to how you do it. It became essential to do it in an efficient and a timely manner, while contributing positively towards the society and the environment. In the current scenario, work has transcended to being something that gives one's life purpose. It imparts meaning to his or her existence. The world is undergoing a great transformation right now, in which business models are being redesigned and value proposals are being redefined. Hence, talent becomes a crucial element of differentiation, and to boost it, it becomes critical to fulfill this search for meaning in the company's brand and its culture, thereby engaging in meaningful employee engagement by adopting the new definition of work. Thank you.
Wonderful. You see, work has to be meaningful. So how good is your work? How meaningful it is. Wonderful. Let's go to the last team also. Last but not the least.
Hello.
Team 4.
Hello, everyone. A very good morning. So my co-panelists have given a comprehensive definition of work already. So like correctly put by them, work to me means something meaningful, something that would keep me engaged and would also contribute to my growth, both professionally and personally. It is about tapping into my skills and talents to create something bigger that impacts others in a positive way. Having said that, workplace to me means something where my thoughts are valued, my ideas are considered, where I feel inclusive, and there's the psychological safety. So all in all, work is something that brings the best out of us and makes us better persons with each passing day.
Wonderful. Synthesis has brought in the workplace also. I mean, work is one thing, but where is the place of work has some significant impact on it. Wonderful. So we have defined what is work. Let's move ahead and say, will that change and why it will change? I mean, work will remain work. Why it will change? Any thoughts? Any thoughts, group one?
Yes, sir. Group one would like to go first for that. Yeah, so the way we look at this, we took three different perspectives. One from the perspective of technology, psychology, and sociology. So from the technology perspective...
Slow. Hey, Raju, slow. Technology?
Yeah, technology, psychology, and sociology. So from the technology perspective, what we looked at was that the process of creative destruction was happening at an accelerated pace. So what that means is that your product and process innovation, it results in the production of new units or enterprises which replace your outdated ones. So, and this is happening at an accelerated pace. So, for example, you had banks for centuries where you could deposit and withdraw money. So you had bank tellers. And then you had ATMs, which have ruled for about the last couple of decades. So then all of your bank tellers moved into customer associate roles. And then now you have digital wallets, which will last for about 3 years. And now what you see is unified payment interfaces, which offer direct bank-to-bank transactions. So they've actually diversified their offerings. So you don't have customer associates anymore. You have financial services associates now. So that's just one example from the technology perspective. And from the psychology perspective.
Okay, technology we have understood. We'll come back to you, Raju.
Sure.
We'll go to next group.
Yes.
Next group. Why work will change? Or why work will change?
Yes. So, to begin with, sir, the concept of VUC environment was first used in 1987. But what I believe is perhaps the acronym has undergone a progression during the COVID-19 pandemic. So what I see is a transition from a VUCA to a V-square UCA environment. With the addition of a newer dimension, virtual in the environment, an environment which currently is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So several studies have suggested that most organizations will shift to virtual settings, reducing physical proximity in the coming years. So there are two types of organizational strategies. Traditionally, organizations optimize their processes for efficiency. So they tailored their processes to specific market conditions. So when market conditions were stable, they were able to have a quick and easy access to markets, but it also created rigid dependencies. So the processes were only effective if the market remained stable, and any change made the process less efficient. Whereas on the other set of companies that have it, they had a resilience for that. They had the resilience characteristic in them. So they were able to remain competitive even in rapidly changing market conditions and circumstances. So as conditions change, resilient organizations are better able to respond, course correct, and ultimately survive. So this pandemic has shown us one thing very clearly. Organizations that focused on business resilience like Goldman Sachs were able to cope better than those who focus on business efficiency. So by taking lessons from the pandemic, organizations are now shifting their focus from being efficient to being resilient. So because of this paradigm shift, the nature of work is bound to change.
Okay. Snell, we are still on why work will change. For example, Raju said technology. That's one reason work will change. Let's go to group 3. Group 3.
Yes.
Why? Why work would change?
In my view, the nature of work is changing because digitalization and automation are increasingly being, part of life these days. And it is a major, potential disruptor in the way of work. And it was very much evident during COVID-19 pandemic that the people became highly dependent on the remote working style. And this is one of the outcome of the digitalization process only. So we can say that, uncertainty in the environment has really shaped the world of work. And another important reason that I could figure out is the post-pandemic talent crisis. For example, currently US labor market is facing this particular situation. And this talent crisis is a consequence of the unavailability of the required skilled workforce. So in my view, all these changes in the environment would bring a radical shift in the world of
You are
work.
saying environment is a factor. Okay. Raju, I'll come to you for the psychology. I'll go to group 4 first. Group 4.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, to present over here. And first of all, I would like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak up at such an eminent forum. So, sir, we would also, or I would also like to say that the work is surely going to change. The perspective on which the work is going to change, as it is one of the member have already said that it is on the technological advancement, as the technology is getting advanced day and night, and we are getting new and new types of forums, types of opportunities, types of technical advancement to go ahead and showcase our work. So definitely whatever the traditional work which was going on beforehand has now changed, and it has emerged as a newly perspective. Work has already impacted all the sectors, not even one. and it has been given a digital platform as well. So the digital platform has also increased the speed of the work which was being done before, and now it has increased a lot and many folds. So there are many benefits also with respect to the changing of work, like there is less input which is required to get a more output.
We are not discussing benefits, Akarshan. We are only saying why it will change. Why it will change. Reasons.
So work is definitely going to change, sir, with respect to technological. With respect to technological advancements as well as on the digital platforms which has come up and changed the traditional part.
Wonderful. Raju, you said psychology. Why psychology will have an impact on work?
Yes, sir. So increasingly what we've seen is that this is something that the other groups had alluded to even in the definition of work. So there's a growing importance of well-being in society. So there's a complete melding of work and life. And increasingly the topics that have grown in stature are mental and purposeful well-being. So what the younger generation has is this entrepreneurial mindset to say that, if the market doesn't have opportunities for them to be able to see their purpose in action, they will go out and go create their own opportunities. So because of this importance of well-being and purpose, there's newer innovation and newer streams of work that arise because they want to be able to see their purpose in action.
Wonderful. While I asked you a question, you are more agile than us unexpectedly. No surprises. You should be more agile than us. When I was asking you a question on why it is changing, you're also saying what changes have happened. It's a very good. No, you are one step ahead. Quickly, each group, can you tell me one important change that is happening or will happen? One important change at the work, group one. One or two.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, Ladli ma'am, can you have my slide on the stage? So good afternoon, everyone. Yeah. I'm Dr. Arpita Singh from NMIMS Mumbai. And as Canadian philosopher Michael McLuhan has rightly said, the future of work is learning a little. And thanks to the pandemic, 2020 has been an immense humanitarian disruptive year. And this has enabled, as you can see in the middle of my slide, humans to upskill not only in technical domains, but you can see even in 3 fundamental human capabilities, which are expertise, relationships, and creativity. And at the junction of these is human-centered device. Now, all the decisions which organizations take, they take keeping the human centricity as a filter before they are taking the decisions. Why it is important? First of all, it keeps the employee engaged. And second important change is that the changing purpose of office. Earlier, we used to come to office to just do paperwork or do their desk job. Now, that can be done at home. Now, people are coming to work for a more social experience, for a more interactive, engaging, and collaborating face-to-face experience. Also, if you can see on the left side of my slide, there is work disruption. People have already spoken about technological infusion. We have virtual teams. Now, to Zoom has become a verb. Okay, earlier it was something which we didn't know about. Then there are service marketplaces, remote work, open innovation, distributed workflow. There is increased emphasis on automation. There is partnership between human beings and machines, and work is given in a way where there is a partnership with them. There is location independence. I am in Mumbai. All of you are in different parts of India, and we are sitting here discussing. This is the change that has happened. We are sitting here and discussing from different forums, and that is hats off to the pandemic. Maybe the organizations have learned to do that. Lastly, I want to say about yes, ma'am.
Dr. Arpita, I'm pausing you. Audience is asking, can they take a photograph of this? Is okay?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Yes, it is okay. They'll take a photograph. I'll come back to you. Group 2.
Yes.
What are 1 or 2 big changes happening in work or will happen in work? Group 2.
Right. Thank you, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. When I was discussing it with my fellow panelists before, I realized that one of the main things that will change in how we view work is through culture. So the impact of organizational culture in today's world has significantly changed from, let's say, half a century ago. In regards to that, there are about 3 predictions how I think that the work will change. The first is, according to a report by Great Place to Work, employees will be looking for a fairer workplace, and they will put more emphasis on that. So studies have also shown that in the recent decade, employee fairness has become highly correlated with greater revenue as well. And more specifically, when you have a consistent and inclusive organization culture, and as well as more diverse organization culture, it can outperform its peers. So organizations will definitely move towards more equity and more meritocracy-based culture. The second is that there will be an increased focus in developing all employees. And that will be a direct result of the culture that the organization as a whole has. So here I was looking at top 50 Forbes top 50 organizations, and they're already looking to develop these leadership accountability plans, and they're carrying out these caring workplace surveys that measure things like work-life balance, emotional health, etc. So that is a change that will be coming. And the last, very quickly, yes, the last change that I'm seeing is that employees are looking for a deeper purpose to remain in an organization. Especially millennials, us millennials in particular, we have this higher premium on feeling like a sense of purpose at work. So studies have shown that about 84% of employees in the top 100 organizations on the Forbes list want to have a special meaning at work, and they feel like they have a special meaning. That's why their organization is in the top 100. So that is...
I represent the 16%, don't worry. 80% or 84% of you. Group 3, major changes in work, now or future. Tell one or two major.
Sure. So we believe that today we live in a world where there's a fundamental transformation in the way we work. So COVID has actually enabled organizations to reimagine their workplace strategy by creating a strong emphasis on flexibility and cost reduction. And this directly impacts the gig economy as well, creating a sudden surge in demand of these workers for companies across the globe. Then we see that with shift to virtual setups, there was a rapid increase in automation and digitalization, thus creating an urgent need for a strong human-machine partnership to deliver better results. So one such example was DBS Bank, which actually started using chatbots for its recruitment process, and it also appointed a chatbot coach to assist the recruitment team in the recruitment process. And the result of that was the candidate screening time reduced from 32 minutes per candidate to 8 minutes. But this is not just a one-off case of using technology successfully. We see technology creeping in every HR field today, be it employee well-being or higher performance or upskilling of workers. So for example, we see recently PwC created an online platform for employee well-being that is called Be Well, Work Well. So it's a habit bank which was made to improve the physical well-being of employees. But all of this has also created two important challenges for the companies. One is training of employees, especially the non-IT staff. Currently, we see that 62% people feel that they are not well equipped with the relevant skills to do their jobs well.
Okay.
And the second challenge is ensuring trust and safety within the organization. Because of this, because of technology being used, 71% people are worried about data breaches. So I feel that all these changes have created a new HR function, which brings by building the workforce needed to compete in this digital future.
Okay, I'll come to you for the solution. We are now discussing what changes are happening and why they are happening. I'll go to the last group, then we'll come back to you for solution, strategy, preparation. Okay, last group, what changes happening in work now or later?
Thank you so much for the question, sir. And a very good afternoon to everyone.
Who is answering? Nidhi.
Yeah, so Nidhi Singh from XISS.
Oh, same Nidhi who got that scholarship?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So when we look at the business environment of today and also the future, like one of the co-panelists mentioned, it is described as VUCA, where V stands for volatile, U for uncertain, C for complex, and A for ambiguous. And in order to deal and adapt to the complexities of the future, there are bound to be changes. Now, the question being, what kind of changes? One of the most important changes that I believe will take place is in terms of decentralization of workforce. Because of increased penetration of technology and readily available access to internet, remote work is already common. The future holds not just work from home, but rather work from anywhere. Now, when we say work from anywhere, this draws our attention to the fact that businesses in the future are more than likely to have globalization of workforce, since it's one of the perks of the fourth industrial revolution, and also the advantage that it transcends geographical barriers. So when we talk of a diverse workforce in a fluid and flexible work environment, we definitely think of performance management. This brings us to the second most important change. The pandemic shift, as I would like to call it, has already pushed workers and employees to take on a wide variety of roles and regulations. I believe the demand of future of work is shift to an outcome-based performance management when employees' performance is solely on their output rather than the time spent on working.
Oh, wonderful. I requested organizers to show me
work from anywhere, and IBM is completely remote. They have gone about flexibility for personal needs is what their motto is. Now, understanding this all, we understood that there is no fixed solution to the hybrid work, and there is no right answer to it as well. So what we did is that we made a framework, that is a hybrid work framework, as you can see in the right side, and it has stance, leadership, management, and implement. If I may, I will explain a bit about each of them. So in stance, we need the organization position on hybrid working, that we need to ask questions like what is the overall approach to hybrid working, or how are we going to apply it in distinct geographies. India is a very diverse country, so how are we going to do it even abroad? What flexibility do we need for individual decisions by people leaders? So, and what kind of assistance will provide to the employees to work from home? So these are some of the things which stance has to be taken by the organization. Second is leadership. Leaders have to communicate, and they themselves have to be an example to do so. Like even if you have seen HUL and all leaders, they have to connect with the employees every now and then. And this time we need to see more of our leaders. And third is management. Management has to put everything on paper, like what are the changes we need to do, or which are the days you're coming, what are the problems you're facing, everything. And last is enablement. Which is most important, three things.
Can I request everybody to... Hello? Can I request others to keep yourself muted so that Arpita will enable us with the explanation to enablement. Okay, enablement. Yes.
Yeah. So first thing is digital literacy. We need a substantial uplift from to have to equip people to work from home. Not only the main staff but also the frontline staff, everyone. Then there's technical enhancement. In this technical enhancement, we like Microsoft Teams. They launched that application so fast that even their cloud had been jammed because of so much of downloads and so much of using of Teams. So according to Forbes survey, also 76% of the companies have worked faster than they had earlier. The changes have happened that fast. And similarly, as I told earlier, Zoom fatigue and to Zoom, these became part of our normal language.
Sorry, I'm stopping you. Tell me, is hybrid a challenge? Or is it hybrid is a solution? Is hybrid is an opportunity?
It's an opportunity, and it's an ongoing book which is getting written because more companies are coming. They are giving their own definitions. They are making their own models, and as and when it is just going on. It's an ongoing process, and
let's all prepare ourselves to leverage this model. Huh? Okay, we'll go to group 2. If you have a slide, please show. Yeah, okay. This is a different slide. Wonderful. This is group 2.
Yeah.
Who is presenting?
Yeah.
Aman. Who will present? Aman. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the coming to the solution part. So with the premise of changing nature of work discussed in the last 30-40 minutes, and now work changing even faster pace due to global pandemic. Our group has made an attempt to build model that will touch or try to incorporate major cornerstone of HR intervention that needs to be required to get done for the future work. So the model has 4 dimensions, each described in each quadrant. So the first one is better health and mental well-being. Second, better work. Third is enhanced organizational justice. And fourth is organizational support. Then coming to the center of the model, you can see there is a creating and building inclusive culture, which will act as a foundation for all the 4 dimensions mentioned here. And the outer periphery has leadership support, which will advocate the initiative across 4 dimensions into mainstream translation. So coming to the first dimension, better health and mental well-being. Here, health incorporates both physical health as well as social health. So this dimension focuses on HR policies, having prevention, which means early sensing and intervention, then promotion, which means here encouraging employees for taking ownership of their own health and well-being, and at last, whole person approach, which is creating environment that will enable employees to take informed, healthy choices on physical, mental, social, and financial well-being. Next dimension will be explained by Nitika.
Oh, Nitika.
Thanks, Amman. So the second aspect of this model is providing employees better work for a better culture. So this simply means that we're creating good work and working conditions for the employees. And to do that, there are a couple of things that we can do. First is we regularly audit the mental health risks in the work environment, as well as physical ones. And then we develop a plan for minimizing those risks. The second is increasing...
what did you say? Mental health risk?
Mental health risk. Yes, for the purpose of psychological safety. So employees feel that they are safe at work.
Very good.
Then the second is increasing leadership and management's understanding of the positive and negative impact of work and having them be accountable for that. The third is regularly monitoring and reporting on the working conditions and including employee feedback and giving that out in organizational changes. And lastly, is conducting an exhaustive job leveling, which at least once in 3 years, which can help in fairly designed jobs and compensation for the employees. Moving on to the next dimension, which is organizational justice. Now we know what organizational justice is. In the model that we created, this also brings to the forefront the importance of having organizational fairness. And for an inclusive culture, this is very important, that the employee perceives that there is primarily distributive justice, which reflects perceptions regarding the fairness and the outcomes. There is procedural justice, which reflects perceptions of the processes. And lastly, there's interactional justice, which means that there is cohesion between all the employees in the organization. Now Snehal can take it forward.
Yeah, so thank you, Nitika. So I believe that organizational support strategy should include the traits which I would like to, I have made an acronym, that is SET. So S stands for support at the levels of supervisor, peers, and subordinates. Okay. So these are the closest members with whom any employee interacts. E stands for empathy for employees, and T stands for trust between managers and employees, because in the future, since mostly everything would be virtual, so manager and employee won't be meeting in person regularly in future. So trust needs to be developed to ensure appropriate cooperation between the two parties. So to conclude, we suggest that HR professionals should design future HR policies, keeping in mind the 4 aspects that we have discussed together. So that's all.
Nehal, HR professionals will not do. You will do, okay?
Yes.
You will be the HR professional. You will be the ER professional. You will be the business leaders. Okay. Well, can we go to the next group then? Ladli? Yeah. Oh, this is something different. Okay, they already got a trophy. Who will present?
Sir, I'll start. So one of the recurring themes in all of the talks that we had today was the flexibility that both the employers and the employees desire in the kind of work that they are doing, either to support some quantum of work which has come up periodically, or maybe to support some work which has been requested, which is not the core competency of the organization. So for this, a temporary set of either independent contractors or freelancers are sometimes onboarded, and this concept, the implementation of this concept gives birth to the gig economy. The reasons, as we can see, are either to have increased adaptability to market changes, or maybe giving better resources to what is the core competency, or maybe just to operate in a better manner. Now my co-panelists will take it forward.
उसका नाम बता दो यार.
So
Bhargavi, sir.
from India.
Bhargavi. I don't know everybody. Na? Bhargavi, come go ahead.
Yes, sir. So now I'm going to talk about certain steps that the people, the organizations, as well as the governments should take in order to fully realize the potential of this economy. So I feel from employers' end, what is required is that the online platforms should tailor their services to provide for basic prerequisites for the companies, like ensuring background checks on workers, their commitment to task completion, and also ensuring repeatability of certain workers for specific projects. But an ecosystem which is capable of providing 90 million jobs to India's non-farm economy alone can't just be enabled through these minimum requirements. So the need of the hour is unbundling stack of information and services, and also providing a common set of standards and interoperability protocols across the industry. Also, talking about workers' issues in this economy, I feel that a viable solution for this can be a more conducive public policy and companies stepping up to ensure worker protection and providing a favorable working environment for these gig workers. Now, Kritika would continue on the public policy aspect.
Kritika.
Thank you, Bhargavi. So further, I would like to talk about the actual execution process. Like in the current context, gig workers are not covered under any legislation or any legal framework, but they are solely governed by the contractual obligation between the individual and the organization as such. However, as we all know that our country is in the way of introduction of labor law reforms because they are amalgamating 29 labor laws into 4 labor codes, and that will further help in organizing the gig workers and making them more structured. So now with the implementation of once this bill is passed and the implementation of the social security code, which is one of the 4 codes, is done, then the gig workers would be able to sustain in such an uncertain and the highly competitive market. Otherwise, their sustenance would be at stake. Further, the HR department should, or actually look upon the proper implementation of these laws. And apart from that, coaching, mentoring, and also sometimes reskilling would help in making them more agile and stay in consonance with the organization.
Wonderful. Complete.
Another important thing, yes. Another important thing is that the organization should carry out regular HR audit process, as it would help them in examining how effective are these policies and practices which are being implemented by the organization. And the organization can also go for hiring women gig workers, as often talented women workers are not able to join full-time employment due to the dual responsibilities which they have at the workplace as well as their back at the home, and hence employing gig workers would prove to be a viable solution for meeting these issues related to changing nature of work.
Okay, it's a good thought, getting women or LGBT minorities, because they will all get an opportunity. Can you go to the last group? Oh, something moving. Last group.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What is
So
your
now we
solution?
shall try to explain the importance of diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
On the future of work. So we have been seeing organizations becoming more inclusive and LGBTQ friendly, and companies are tapping into untapped potential of differently abled and neurodiverse candidates. So the recruitment strategies are definitely going to get changed going forward. Sources where diverse candidates can be found are being used already. For example, there are many online and offline groups dedicated to women in technology. This could be a great source to meet and connect with high caliber female candidates directly. Also, employer brand will be developed in such a way that diversity is showcased. So shortlisting is now automated using ATS already, so that there is minimal bias. Coming to diversity initiatives, not just recruiting, retention of diverse candidates is equally important. For that, there should be a fair treatment given to such employees. all the employees in the organization should be sensitized. They should be trained on topics like unconscious bias. And most importantly, leadership should be committed to diversity and inclusion. I believe that for this to happen, openness should be fostered in an organization. One should be free to express oneself. Discrimination should be tackled by enabling equality of opportunity. I would now request my co-panelist Nidhi to take the discussion forward.
Thank you so much, Ms. Simhuja. Now, we look at the various aspects of diversity and inclusion. So when we talk about flexible work policies, one of the most important aspects of inclusion of a diverse workforce lies in recognizing the business value of gender equality through formalized policies and measured outcomes, and especially taking up a bottom-up approach to provide equitable benefits to the entire workforce. When we talk about more innovation, definitely. Diversity drives creativity, better efficiency, and especially innovation because it fuels disruptive thinking and enables challenging the status quo, which I believe is going to be a strong aspect of the future of work. And when we look at the fifth point, that being improved performance, diversity and inclusion is a driving force for innovative ideas and team performance in the workplace. According to a McKinsey report, companies with a diverse workforce are 35% more likely to outperform those without diversity initiatives. Now I would request Mr. Akarshan to summarize the discussion and also throw some light upon the IR aspect.
Thank you, Nidhi. So as we have seen, yes, thank you, Nidhi. So as we have seen and observed that diversity and inclusion is playing a majority and a major part in the organization. The inclusiveness of how to attain the diversity in an organization has always been a key important aspect for the diversity to foster. Now, I would like to go ahead with one of the aspect of IR of how the D&I is being linked towards it. So organization fostering and emphasizing on diversity and inclusion in a good and a proper way have more better of in a way of collective bargaining, and also there are less number of strikes and which has been observed on that particular note where D&I has been fostered. Now going ahead with the gender pay issue, which is currently being seen in India, like there is, as per the World Economic Forum as well, the report has been published that due to the global gender gap, India has been ranked 112th out of the 153 countries which we have seen. So these are few of the areas which can be looked upon and can have a better arrangement on that. So thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So we have got 4. So group 1 said hybrid, correct? Group 4 said D&I, and group 3 said gig. Group 2 was culture, no? They said inclusive culture, correct? So wonderful. You have got a strategy, you have got a preparation, you got a solution, you got thoughts. So all the best to you. Will you like to take a few questions from the audience, students? Are you ready? Okay, Ladli, we have got time, so can we take 1 or 2 questions from the audience? Is Ladli there in the screen?
Sure, sir,
Ladli.
I'm there.
Yeah, are there any questions to us, or you can ask a question?
So there's a question related to wages. Should I take it up?
Yeah, why
not? I'm trying to connect the question. It's written that wages increase by the virtue of wage settlement. Can we execute settlement with the union in case of fixed term? What would be the wages? Will it be a sustainable model?
This it is not mandatory for you. If you want to answer. Otherwise, you can skip it. Students, you want to answer this, or you want to skip? Okay. Okay, I think they're skipping it. So, any other question you have? Otherwise, I have got some questions. Ladli?
I'll request the audience to ask few questions if they have any. Dr. GP Rao, I would request you to check if you have any question addressed personally.
No. I want senior people who are available here to come here on the panel and ask questions to my students. Yeah, Mr.
Sure.
Siddiqui is here. See, I think of him, he's here. Second was, any questions to the students?
I was only looking at GP1, kind of uncertainty or this thing in terms of
the various perspectives raised. Culture is one most powerful kind of intervention which will be required in future for transformation. And I think some of our young friends have talked about that perspective. So I wanted a little bit of clarity as to the how part of what kind of transformation in culture we are going to do. How part, how we are going to do it.
Group two. How are you going to get that culture nurtured, created, nurtured, maintained? Group two, any thoughts? Hey,
so I can go ahead and take it.
Yes.
If we can have our model back up, that would be great. But meanwhile, I'll just start. So from our discussions and our research, there are two aspects to culture. One is a very practical approach, which is happening in organizations today. And one is what theory is suggesting. So when we look at both of those approaches in cohesion, what we think that it should be a top-down approach. I think when leaders decide that they need to have certain parameters and they set certain parameters, that definitely trickles down from top to bottom. So the primary thing that an organization should focus on is their leadership, holding that accountable, the leadership having certain goals and values that they follow, which will definitely trickle down in the organization. And from a bottom-up perspective, there should be more of mental health and employee well-being, what would you call them, benefits essentially that are set up. So you can have surveys where you measure that, and then when you get responses, you can have certain programs that run across, like R&R programs or something that are very common. But something that is different can be having mental wellness days off for certain employees. Sometimes there are personal issues where they don't want to discuss, they don't want to take sick days. So that could be a new and innovative approach.
Okay. Thank you, Nikita. Dwarka sir, their models are around gig, hybrid, culture, and DNA. So they say if you focus on these four, we'll be able to manage work better. Any questions?
Can I add one point to the culture?
Arpita wants to add? Yeah, please.
So earlier we had 4 types of culture. One is
1 minute, Arpita. There is a noise coming. Everybody has to mute, then you can answer. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So earlier we used to see there were 4 types of organization culture. There was clan culture, where there was more of a family type of thing. Then there was adhocracy culture. Then there was a market culture, which was quite competitive. And then we have hierarchy culture. But thanks to the pandemic, the emphasis has changed to an adhocracy type of culture, where all in all organizations are becoming more and more adaptable to the changes. And kind of teams are becoming clans of their own, because now people who earlier were not that close to each other are becoming close, because crisis brings people together. And that's what I just wanted to add.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that value add. We'll request Dwarka sir, if he has got any thought or a question around these 4 models.
Thank you, Dr. J.P. Rao, for asking me this question. I think it's a fascinating discussions which I've been following. I think you touched upon all the aspects, relating to culture is important, leadership is important. I think, the point which Ms. Siddique has made, it is not saying what is the purpose. Actually, we should be very clear about what Ms. Suresh Narayan has said in the morning. What is the purpose for which this organization strives for? It can keep changing, Dr. Arpita, depending on the cards, but its fundamentals will not change. I just want to give you one example to reinforce what you have said. I am not questioning you on this. It's absolutely correct. Say GSK, purpose, why we are in this business. Our global quest to improve the quality of human life. The quality of human life is important by enabling people to do more, live longer, happier. See, there are outcomes. Outcomes can keep changing, but fundamentals of the culture, DNA you talked about, cannot be changed unless you change the whole model. For example, we have disposed of many products which are a cash cows in the market because it did not fit into the scheme of things. So for me, if you want to succeed leadership culture, the purpose for which you are driving this culture, it has to start from there. Tone at the top is important.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, Musarat san or Dhananjay san, any questions from you for the students around hybrid, inclusive culture, gig or DNA? You have any question? Otherwise, we will go towards the closing. Musarat san, Dhananjay? Okay. So, Ladli, I hope there are no questions pending, no?
So there are two questions in the chat box.
Okay,
wellness, specifically mental wellness, seems to have got a lot of importance in today's management agenda across the board. What are the reasons for this change, and where do you think we, as HR professionals, balance our business priorities vis-a-vis employee wellness?
Okay. So, question to you. Where are we in terms of focus and mental wellness, and how are you going to give the imperative to this? I mean, balancing business and mental wellness. Anybody want to answer?
So can I take this?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. So I think that with this COVID pandemic in picture, emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual wellness has been impacted a lot. And there are a lot of companies today that are coming up with different initiatives just to make sure that every employee in the company feels well. And the reason why it is important is because it hampers the productivity of the employees. Remote working has led to a lot of confidence losing also amongst people because all of them are working in silos. And it's important for them to encourage the employees and make sure that they are mentally fit. So some of the examples I would like to talk about is that there are a lot of companies which started these wellness programs, and they try to make sure that there are, say, some initiatives that are taken to ensure that people are able to be mentally well. For example, there were yoga initiatives also. A lot of companies took over to ensure that people are able to relax for some time. They're not under stress. They're not under anxiety every time. There were companies who said that after evenings on Fridays, there'll be no meetings that will be conducted because that really impacts a person. And on Saturday and Sunday, because work from home is actually creating 24/7 jobs for people. So there has to be certain free time available to people. They should not be under duress all the time. So all of this has really created a new employee well-being aspect in the industry. Importance of that.
Oh, yeah. Question, Bhargavi, will this make business sense? Can we integrate with business? Do you think yes? No? Very good. Okay, what is the last question, Ladli? Last question.
So can I add a point to it?
Nidhi, just wait. Maybe the last question you will answer. Okay.
Sure. So the last question is, are there any drawbacks of gig economy for the permanent employment of people?
Okay. Will the gig, because the permanent structure, will this affect that culture of having people on regular day? And who would like to answer?
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please. But short answer, short.
Sure, sir. So, like I said, that gig economy is not something that has already been integrated into the mainstream. It is something which has been leveraged by organizations, either when the quantum of work is very high, like in a periodic cycle, or when the quality of work or the kind of work that the client is expecting is not something which falls within the core competency of the organization. So coming to the permanent thing, I mean, the permanent employees will always be working to, develop the core competency of the organization. The gig workers will only be providing relevant support whenever, as and when it is required. Hence, I do not believe that it would affect or cause disruption in the organizational culture per se.
Okay, very good. Very good. No, I think this will evolve. There were days when people used to come and make a request to us that give me a regular job only for 6 months. So that means temporarily permanent. He wanted. Another kind of people, he said he doesn't want full-time job. हमको लेकिन regularly job दीजिए, temporary job. She is permanently temporary. So maybe gig में भी ऐसा कुछ आएगा. Everybody will do that. Wonderful. So we will now, since there are no more questions, we will conclude. Wonderful discussion. You have described what is work, why work is changing, what changes are happening, and you have come out with models. That's more interesting. You made a lot of preparation, agility was there, your thought process was there, You very practical ideas were there, and you are not suggesting to us, you are suggesting to yourself because you are going to implement these. I know you are aware of that, you are mindful of that. Wonderful discussion, and you also answered questions asked by senior people and people from the chat box also. Wonderful. I have enjoyed, and I'm seeing that future of work, while it is a little challenging, it will be very interesting also. And HR and IR as a profession will find managing future of work with lot of agility, lot of satisfaction, lot of opportunity for contribution. So let us look forward to a interesting future of work. Thank you so much. Over to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. What an amazing discussion we had. And thank you, students, for adding new dimension to our discussion, the future of work. I would like to thank the seniors, Mr. Siddiqui, Mr. Dwarkanath, for their questions. Very relevant and added value to the discussion. Dr. G.P. Rao, I would like to thank you. Your energy was infectious and we could feel your vibes even on the virtual medium. Thank you so much, sir. We will move forward. I would now request Mr. Dhananjay to please propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ladli San, respected Ms. Suparna Devji. In absentia, our keynote speaker in the morning, Mr. Suresh Narayanan, Dr. Santrup Mishra, P. Dwarkanath sir, Mr. S.Y. Siddiqui, Mr. Suresh Tripathi, Mr. Rajesh Uppal, Dr. G.P. Rao. We had some addresses, recorded addresses, Ms. Rekha Sethi from All India Management Association, Dr. Natraj Ray, ISTD, Mr. Vishwesh Kulkarni, NIPM, Mr. Behel, CII, Mr. S.V. Nathan, National HRD Network. Our speakers, Madhu Damodran, Shrikant Reddy, Ram Kishore, R.P. Singh, and students, our young leaders, Dr. Arpita Sen, Narsi Monji Bombay, Snehal Chandra, IIM Ranchi, Nikita IMI Aditya Liba, Sindhuja SCM HRD, Kritika Acceleri, Akarshan XIM, Mahindra TIS, Nidhi XISS, Vyom Dhaval SIBM, Aman IM Trichy, and Bhargavi from MDI. You all have been simply inspiring and outstanding. On behalf of the organizers, Maruti Suzuki, XISS, Awanish Kumar Memorial Trust, and all the partners in the process, with the core of our heart, we would like to propose a vote of thanks for each one of you and joining us here in this 9th edition of Awanish Dev Memorial Lecture. We had deliberations on two important subjects: redefining ER strategies with focus on employee well-being by the senior colleagues of the industry, moderated by none other than respected P. Dwarkanath sir, and the student panel on a very important topic of future of work, again moderated by one of the veterans, none other than Dr. G.P. Rao Garu sir. So we thank you, each one of you, for joining us in this 9th edition. And as always, Dwarka sir says, he quotes Peter Drucker, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it is equally true and more true when we talk about IR and industrial relations and employee relations. So we would like to thank once again all the participants who have joined us, not only on GoToWebinar medium, but also on different channels. We experimented this time on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. Thank you very much. And last but not least, we would like to thank the core team of organizing, which is led by none other than Musarat San and Ladli San from Maruti Suzuki, and Avinash San from National HRD Network. Thank you very much, and thanks for sharing or grief, sorrow, opportunity to build a very positive industrial relations when we think of our colleague Avnish, whom we lost 9 years back. We look forward to the next edition and we look forward to you joining us there. Meanwhile, be safe. And thank you once again. Over to the organizers, please. Over to Latli and Musarat San. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your address and vote of thanks. Thank you to the respected seniors and all the dignitaries who have joined us today, have invested your time in this session, and also the faculty members and students who have joined us today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you Dhananjay also. Thank you Musarat, thank you Ladlisan. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.